All right, good evening, everyone. It is 6 o'clock, so we will begin the Tuesday, February 18th, 2025, Liberty Lake City Council meeting. We want to make sure we recognize that the mayor is not with us tonight. We'll be excusing her in just a couple of minutes. And City Administrator McAvoy will be joining us via Zoom shortly if he's not already on. Is he on? Okay, great. Thanks very much, Mark. We'll start with our invocation followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand.
Our Father in heaven, we come before thee in gratitude this evening for this opportunity that we have to come together as city leaders and citizens, and we're grateful for the chance that we have to live in this beautiful community. We're so thankful for all the opportunities that we have to serve in this area and associate with good people. We pray that thou will bless us this evening as we discuss the business of the city, that we can make wise decisions, that we can counsel together, and that we can accomplish the work that we have before us. And these blessings and favors we pray for in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you. We will call again to order and start with our roll call with Councilmember Van Orman.
Here.
Councilmember Kurtz.
Present.
Councilmember Ball.
Here.
Councilmember Cargill's here. Councilmember Spencer.
Present.
Councilmember Dunn.
Happy to be here.
And Councilmember Kennedy.
Present.
All right, as I mentioned earlier, the mayor is going to be out with a family emergency. So can we get a motion to excuse the mayor?
Move to excuse Mayor Kaminskas.
Second. No.
Okay, motion by Councilmember Dunn and second by Councilmember Kennedy. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. Passes 7-0. All right, we are up to agenda approval. Are there any changes being proposed to the agenda? Hearing none, we will accept the motion to approve the agenda.
Move to approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
Okay, motion by Councilmember Dunn, second by Councilmember Kurtz. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right, passes 7-0. Thank you. Up to citizen comments now. You, everyone here in the chambers, as well as those online, you all have 3 minutes for your citizen comments. Try to keep them on point and respectful. And just a reminder, if you do not want to make a citizen comment now, you'll have the opportunity at the end of the meeting as well. Do we have any citizen comments there, Kelsey?
I don't have any
Nobody
forms
person?
submitted. I do have a written comment to acknowledge.
Okay. Anybody online? No? Okay. Anybody in the chamber going once? Going twice? All right. Again, just a reminder, you can sign up for citizen comments at the end as well. Kelsey, do you want to read that one?
Yeah, so we received a written public comment from Robin Beckadal, and it was regarding the city council rules of procedure and possible changes to the citizen comment guidelines.
All right. Thank you very much. We are now up to 7A, announcements, proclamations, and special presentations. And we will start with our friends from Scope.
Hi, good evening. I'm really happy to be here. I have a small presentation to give for you guys tonight. My name is Chris Conway. I'm director of Scope. I've been the director for 2 years now. I've been with Scope for about 8 years. So Scope, Sheriff Community Oriented Policing Effort. Next slide. Thank you. We are a nonprofit organization and we have over 220 dedicated volunteers providing public safety programs and services throughout Spokane County and the city of Spokane Valley in Liberty Lake in partnership with the Spokane County Sheriff's Office. Our mission is to provide a safe living environment in the community that we serve, help increase citizens' awareness, involvement in the community-oriented services, and to foster community spirit. We have 4 staff. 3 of them are behind, or 2 of them are behind me. I am the director. We have our program manager, Margaret. Lee Chessman is our CERT coordinator, And Sierra Griffin is our neighborhood watch coordinator. So if you have a neighborhood watch in Liberty Lake, she's the one that will come out, put meetings together for you and help get those going for you. We have 7 board of directors. We have 13 scope stations throughout the county and the valley and in Liberty Lake, of course, in the police department. Our stations are open to the public and they're solely run by the volunteers. And the deputies are always welcome to come to our stations to take their breaks and write their reports. One of our programs that is one of our most popular ones and we utilize our volunteers a lot is our Citizens on Patrol. This is where our volunteers go out in our scope cars and they're the eyes and the ears for law enforcement. They are patrolling neighborhoods, schools, trails, and they're calling in any suspicious activity. We do prowl checks and business checks and vacation home checks. If you happen to be going on vacation, people are winter birds, they give us all that information and we do those checks too on their houses. Bicycle safety and helmet fitting, Katie Ferris, everybody knows Katie. She is our coordinator for the bicycle safety and helmet fitting. She puts together the bicycle rodeos at the schools and bike to school days. And then we all participate in getting our scope cars to those schools and kind of driving around in those areas. We help with the helmet fitting and this is a very popular one too. We go to events and do helmet fitting for that too. This is just all the other programs that we offer in scope. There's over 20 programs within our organization that we perform. This is our training process. So after the new hires pass the interview, background checks, our volunteers go through our basic training. We do previously, years past, we only did our basic training every 3 months. We decided to get people on board and people going quickly. We're doing onboarding and our basic training class every month. So we are bringing 4, 5, 6, 8 new volunteers a month into scope. So our onboarding is continually going and we're growing our volunteer base every month. Just recently, this is our new recruiting platforms that we are using. So we are now doing radio ads on 99 Coyote Country. We are running our radio ads, 2 different radio ads, 2 weeks out of the month. And then that is our billboard. I hope you guys have seen those. Those are up anytime the Lamar billboards, anytime that a contract is expired, Lamar billboard will put our scope billboard up until they get a new contract up. So we have been up in the Spokane Valley and all around. There's 3 different billboards up and they've been up for all over the valley. So we've gotten a lot of recruiting from those billboards so far. So that's pretty exciting. Those will be going all year long. So other recruiting tools that we've implemented, we have QR codes now. So on our applications and on our business cards, we have QR codes. The stations have all new updated banners and signage when we go out to events that we look good, and we have those QR codes on them. We've created a new Facebook page, so everybody go to that Facebook page right there and like us and follow us on Facebook. And then every community event we attend, we have a recruiting as well there. So we try to recruit people as we do our event. And then Sierra does a Neighborhood Watch newsletter. I hope everybody sees that. That is out in our scope stations. We try to get those out, and those are also online too on our website. So we also try to when we get into communities like Deer Park, we have been able to put a little flyer and a little informational recruiting into their water bill, or we get into the mayor's newsletters and stuff like that, a little bit of recruiting tool. They've allowed us to get into those too. So that's just another piece of recruiting for us. So that's it for me. Any questions?
Questions, Councilmember Ball?
What is the dumb criminal dispatch?
Yes, so
Sounds fun.
at 3:30, they on Coyote Country, they do a little segment about a criminal that has gotten caught because they were dumb in what they did. So it's kind of fun, and yeah, we're the sponsor of that for the rest of the year. So yeah.
And then could you go back to the slides of all the things you do, the one
Yeah.
slide? I want to look at that one more time. You kind of went fast.
There.
Yes, here we go.
There's any questions on those?
Are you still training with CERT?
Yes, we still have our CERT team. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
The SIRT and CERT?
not CERT. No, we don't have that anymore. DEM is they have their own emergency management stuff over there. So we do have a lot of our volunteers that volunteer with DEM too in search and rescue and stuff like that, but we don't have CERT anymore.
I do have one more question.
Yeah.
So you do home checks, like if people are on vacation?
Yeah, if you go to our website and it says vacation home checks, and you click on that, you have the availability to fill out, when you're going to be gone and all your information. It goes directly to me, and then I dispatch it to the appropriate station that you're closest to, and then those volunteers will go out and just drive by your house when you're on vacation. Yeah.
Okay, then they'll go in and.
No, we don't go in, we don't get out of our vehicles, we just drive by and make sure your house is safe, and if we call in any suspicious activity, but you give us so.
Chris, I'm grateful for your time and extending visibility to what Scope does in the community. I really value the work. Regarding Neighborhood Watch,
Yeah.
I've had a lot of people actually ask, I want to start a Neighborhood Watch. So now I have a great resource getting to the website to understand how to.
Yes,
Best suggestions would be, like I need a kit or some kind of here's how to kind of an instruction for me. So
yeah,
I'll be passing that around.
yeah, absolutely. So you can go to our website, or you can just call Scope Maine directly. Sierra Griffin is our Neighborhood Watch coordinator, and she will, she'll get right on that, reach out, and she can start setting up meetings.
Great.
Yeah, perfect.
Thanks.
Additional questions? All right, thanks.
All right,
Chris.
thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
All right, we are up to Visit Spokane and Rose. Good evening.
Good evening. I gave a report, or a presentation. I'm not sure if it's going to be able to show. Possibly. My name's Rose. Thanks for having me again. I think there was a little bit of confusion on the last meeting and I didn't make it out, so I apologize for that hiccup. It's actually part of my effort to make sure that I'm in front of you all quarterly this year. So you will be seeing me 3 more times throughout the year giving presentations. Basically, the idea is just to make sure you are aware of everything that Visit Spokane is doing for Liberty Lake as well as the region. Tonight's presentation is just specifically Liberty Lake recaps, and I'll give you some verbal numbers on our kind of Q4 end. We do have an annual meeting coming up next week. Hopefully you received the invitation. I know the mayor is on our board and she receives those, and I communicate with Mr. McAvoy quite often, who's online tonight. But we will have kind of our 24 overall regional recap at the annual meeting, and I'm happy to send that to you in a follow-up email when we're ready. So we can go to the next slide here. Just a few quick numbers from 24. calculating 72 business mentions listings on our social and website that are specific calls for Liberty Lake. This would be anything in like a blog format or our Reels format or social media. So this would be a siloed mention of a Liberty Lake business, whether it be one of your restaurants or attractions, or even something like your Winter Glow Festival or your park. So we're excited about that number. We also had 14 earned media pickups this year that were specifically mentioned Liberty Lake. Out of those 14, 2 of them were UK, United Kingdom, which is pretty cool. We had some United Kingdom travel writers in partnership with our State Tourism Bureau come to Spokane, and we're able to have Liberty Lake wine cellars as a part of this really cool, intimate farm to table experience. So Liberty Lake wine cellars got mentioned in a few pickups, which we were excited about. And we did a whole video and photo session for that, which I'll talk about in a moment. And then we specifically highlighted 14 of your restaurants in a new restaurant video that included video and photography. We did one full ultimate restaurant video to update the one that we had done for you quite a few years ago. So we're excited about that. And then we have, as a part of that program, have compiled, and we're just about ready to share with all those businesses, professional photography and video snippets for those restaurants to use in their own promotional efforts, however they see fit. Obviously, free of charge, no anything but just a mention to visit Spokane. So we'll go to the next slide. This is the video that we compiled. 2 months. Okay, so it's a little bit long to sit and watch the whole thing through, but this was a specific request to redo this video or update this video from y'all last year. So we were happy to do it. And each one of those restaurants that you saw has their own individual kind of social media version, shortened length video. So for example, the Trailbreakers cider, we have their own little snippet. So the consumer isn't necessarily going to sit and watch that long video every time, but we were able to section that into multiple kind of like a sawdust mentality where it has all these other little parts that we can share out through many promotions throughout the year. So we were happy with that. Hopefully you like it as well. I'm a little hungry right now, so I haven't eaten dinner yet. You can go to the next slide. Just a couple other examples of things we're able to accomplish. On the right-hand side, we're going to click that in a second, the little arrow to play a video. This is the beautiful picture that you see, and the little video is the UK travel writers that we had, and the farm to table experience. And then obviously we do give a nice call out to Liberty Lakes Farmers Market. The spread that you see on the page is in our 2024 visitor guide, which I did bring a couple copies and left on the table. They look beautiful. New art this year. We also have a map. I only brought one map. I think we dropped off more maps earlier in the week, but we're happy to bring more maps. There's a nice Liberty Lake call out on our regional map. So we're excited about that. I think maybe you could push play on that video and it will play. Let's see. This is just an example of a social media version of an experience. A little shorter. with Chad White, who has quite a following. So where that video would play is across our social media channels. We can also embed. Push pause on this, sorry, I just put a ton of videos in the same. We would play that on our social media, but also embed it on our website. And then we could also feature it. We give that to news media. So that entire night was magical, amazing. And we were super happy to promote it and partner with the state of Washington Tourism, we are actively advocating that they receive sustainable funding on the state side. Because if the state is able to have a better budget, then that allows us to have grant opportunities and host more of these type of events where we can showcase very specific small businesses and attractions throughout the region, which would also include Liberty Lake. So hopefully we can bring them back to have us experience in Liberty Lake the next time. And you can go to the next slide, and if the video plays, we can just, it might play on clip. Okay, so this is a Trailbreaker cider. You can see that it's sectioned out from that large video to create its own video specifically for this business. And you can actually go to the next slide so you can watch it. Okay. So I just wanted to show you an example of how we would pull from a larger campaign and have very specific snippets out of this campaign. And then all of those photos will be delivered to the businesses. This is just a reminder that although we do promote Liberty Lake, and we're super happy to have you as a partner, we actually showcase the full range of offerings to attract visitors to our region to enhance the overall visitor experience. You can go to the next slide. And these are all of the things that we do under our umbrella of tourism promotion that we're able to spend our dollars on and focus on. Convention and meeting recruitment is huge for us, but it's not the only thing. So we like to remind everybody that when we talk about tourism promotion, it's arts and culture, it's small business, it's everything that you see listed here. And you can see by this slide, there's many things that Liberty Lake has to offer within this magnitude of promotional offerings that we talk about. So this is where we're spending our money and how we are executing with the state required RCW to promote tourism in the region. Any questions on that? Okay, I think that might be the last slide. There might just be a picture slide at the next thing. So do any questions specifically on some of the Liberty Lake features for 24?
Councilmember Kennedy.
I do have one
Yeah.
Impressive. Thank you. I appreciate that presentation. The restaurants featured in there, Liberty Lake, do they pay a fee to have them
No.
represented there?
No.
Very good.
No
Thank you.
fee. So, and actually that program where we were going to be handing over those assets is new this year. We just decided to do that. We did also apply for additional lodging tax dollars to do some more specific Liberty Lake featured video and photography. It's quite expensive, as you can imagine, but we will be hiring the photographer and dealing with all of the editing and modeling and everything, and then deliver a nice, beautiful package with a bow on it to your businesses to be able to use. And the idea is the more people in the destination with high caliber quality content, the better. So it's like a rising tide lifts all ships. So we're going to be able to do that, I think, a little bit better in 25.
Very good. Thank you.
Hey, shout out to the last image, the salty supplements.
Oh, yeah.
Photo credit on there. That's our community.
Yeah, it's a great photo. Yeah.
Is the video snippets and even those that are restaurant specific available on demand, or you got to request it?
So because it's a pilot program, we will be giving that, it's not on demand yet, but with the application process that we just applied for last week, we will be notifying the businesses that we're coming and shooting and that they are able to have these things ahead of time. So doing the restaurant video, actually, we learned a couple things. As you notice, there's a few restaurants in that video that only had the exterior and not some interior shots. So just tweaking our communications a little bit better to prepare business owners that we're coming and what we're doing and why we're doing it and how it will be used and encouraging them. But not everybody has the best communication skills to get back to us. So if people are eager to work with us, we're eager to work with them.
I think it's an excellent service. In fact, many of these small businesses might not have the social media presence or the video capability. And so
Yes.
to present that available to them, I'm very grateful.
Yes,
Thanks.
absolutely. That's what we're going for. So with, again, Visit Spokane does a lot of big convention business, but no one's coming to a convention if the destination doesn't have things to do, places to go, things to see. So we want to make sure that our small businesses are amplified as much as we can.
So you said the one video with Chad White in particular,
Mhm.
was that specific to all of his restaurants and you had an event there? I'm just confused.
So when we do when we do a pitch to travel writers, we curate like an experience, no matter what it is. So that specific experience was a farm to table, and
Oh.
Chad has a reputation
Right.
that we knew that we'd have a great time, excellent product, as well as some exposure of his own on his own channels. So we leveraged his exposure and we built it around farm to table. And Liberty Lake was the wine that was chosen to be paired with the dinner,
Okay.
in addition to some of Chad's cocktails. But it wasn't his restaurants. He does have a experience called Trail Feast now, where you can actually book, a visitor can book an adventure with him. You go hike through Mount Spokane to a certain location and you cook your food on site. It's actually really cool. So the idea was to pitch that and sell that so that when travel writers go back home and write about coming to the Spokane region, here's a really cool thing you can do. And by the way, check out these vendors. Yeah.
Wow.
So it kind of depends on
Trail
what we're
Feast?
pitching. Trail Feast. Yes.
Okay.
Trail Feast.
Thank you.
It's a little pricey, but it's worth it.
Any other questions for Rose?
Oh yeah, I just want to end real quick by letting you know that we are seeing a bounce back to 2019 numbers. We had 84,500 room nights that we were able to contract in the year of 2024, which is awesome. That is beating our 2019 numbers if you do not count the Fairchild convention that we had in town that brought quite a few people. As well as our visitor center, we saw 35,000 people come to our visitor center down in Riverfront Park. We do have material on Liberty Lake in the visitor center. We do recommend Liberty Lake to people coming through. And 2019 numbers for the visitor center were 37,000. So we're working our way up there. And then one really cool thing you might have noticed this year is that we did do a little bit of a logo brand refresh, not a full brand campaign, but we did a brand refresh, and we had a new campaign called All Around You. So we launched that this year and put quite a few dollars towards digital advertising, increased our website impressions from 1.5 million to over 2 million. So we're really happy with those numbers. And I'm happy to send our year-end recap, as well as what I just showed you, to an email to be distributed to you all. And then if you have any questions later in the week, feel free to reach out, or I'm always happy to give a specific executive summary to Chris to share if I'm not able to be here at another time. Thank you.
Thanks very much,
Thank
Rose.
you.
All right, item 7C, the program profile of the code enforcement and business licensing. Is this all you, Lisa?
Mayor Pro Tem, can you hear me?
We can, Mark.
All right, just real quickly, as Lisa's coming up to the podium, this is just as a reminder, we started this feature last meeting, and our plan is each meeting to profile a different program so that both council and the public can get a sense of what PBB, priority-based budgeting, is going to do, how it's organized, what investments look like, and what results are going to be delivered for those investments. And so because we had a workshop scheduled to talk about some code enforcement issues, we thought that was a good nexus to profile the code enforcement and business licensing program. And so with that, I'm going to turn the floor over to Lisa.
Thank you, Mark. Council members, we're going to talk about, can I get the next slide, please? We want to look at code enforcement, which involves the investigation of complaints, code enforcement actions, and neighborhood resource support. Code enforcement includes review and research of new business licenses for compliance with land use and building code. So as we go through our business licenses, we find out if someone is doing some tenant improvements that may require a building permit that they may not know requires a building permit. So it's a great opportunity for us to kind of connect with them. Also, it gives us the opportunity to make certain that it is a land use that's allowed in the building that they're locating in. So in terms of resources, we have 1.46 full-time equivalents. So this is as we allocate the time that each of us spends on it. Obviously, big part of that is Sue Rao Hudson, who is our code enforcement specialist, but others support that as well, including myself, some other staff members. Kelsey provides some support, as does PD. And so our Personnel costs total 167,000 and change, while non-personnel costs are a little bit over 11,000 for a total investment of 178,600, almost 700. Basic program attributes. Demand for the program is increasing. Obviously, we're growing, and as we grow, we will get more complaints from our citizenry. More than 10% of the population is benefiting. It is a self-mandate or ordinance. There is some cost recovery, not complete cost recovery by any stretch of the imagination, but we do recover a little bit through business licenses. And the city is the sole provider. Next slide, please. So in terms of the strategic plan alliance, there is some alignment with public safety and well-being, some alignment with quality of life and connectedness. There's a minor alignment with economic vibrancy and opportunity, and minor alignment with planned growth and infrastructure. So when you look at these all together, it is somewhat less aligned than some other programs. Next slide, please. And then we wanted to talk about the results that we're looking for in the measures. And these are a work in progress. So voluntary code compliance in neighborhoods is trending upward each year. That's the result we hope to get from this. And our measure will be the number of code violations reported, the ratio of code violations resolved without issuing citations. And again, our goal is voluntary compliance, and you're going to be hearing that again and again from me. So we're trying to get compliance with the carrot instead of the stick. Takes a little more time, takes a little more effort, but that's our desire. That's our desired outcome. And also community satisfaction survey, neighborhood cleanliness score would be, and that's question number 2. So that's, next slide, please. The second result we're looking at is voluntary code compliance at commercial properties is trending upward each year. So the number of business license reviews is one measure. The ratio of building permit applications resulting from business license reviews is another metric that we can look at. And also the number of fire code violations reported through annual inspection. And that's kind of just an adjacency to our program. And with that, I think that is all questions and comments. Any questions or comments?
I do have one for you, Lisa.
Sure.
Can we go back 2 slides? I think it was actually forward one. So the number of business license reviews, can you walk us through how that works? I mean, do we have someone who's actually going through all the business licenses and trying to find something, or?
So we get a number of business licenses. The program that we've had with business license, these are City of Liberty Lake endorsements. The city has been doing this for years, where my department is reviewing them to make sure that it's an allowed use within the zone. So we are really just doing our due diligence before we move forward with the business license. This has been happening since long before I got here. But it's valuable to have Sue, our code enforcement specialist, doing that because number one, it helps her get more familiar with the code as she's learning our code. That's number one. And number 2, it's valuable just in that we see when there's a question on the form, are you doing any improvements? And so she can then follow up to say, hey, so I see that you might be doing some tenant improvements. What are they? And so that we can, in a friendly conversation, let them know that a building permit may be required, depending upon what the improvement is. And so it's a way for us to make sure that we're addressing life safety. I know you all have heard me talk about the immaculate construction that goes on without our knowledge. And so and again, that's a life safety concern. It really is. So that's what we're trying to get at.
Got it. Anything else? All right. Thank you, Lisa. Anything else you want to add on that, Mark?
No, Mayor Pro Tem, you'll have another opportunity to hear more about code enforcement later. But this is just going to be one of these 3 to 5 minute profiles every meeting, so you get a better sense of what's going on.
Okay. All right. Thanks very much. We are now up to reports and inquiries, city council reports. Councilmember Dunn.
Let's see, Tuesday 11th, I had a chance to attend along with Lisa and Nikhil, the active shooter training provided by the police department. Sergeant Sowell, I think, is exceptional. Of course, many of you guys been through this as well. I'm really grateful for the police department's effort to provide training in public safety. It was us and then a handful of community members as well. So there is outreach for this, and it's an important service, and I really appreciate the work of our officers. Earlier in that day, actually, Tuesday 11th, I had a chance to walk through the Amazon Distribution Center on Barker, off Barker, a big part of the Spokane Valley with the Spokane Transit Authority operations team. Cool factoid, all the internal operating independent lift trucks and hardware are hydrogen fuel cell powered on the inside of that building. This was an opportunity for the operations team for STA to get to know a little bit more about what it's like to boots on the ground work with hydrogen as a motor fuel. That's coming soon to a neighborhood near you for zero emission vehicles. So, you know, along with just, I mean, just the craziness of sight lines in all directions to the horizon, to understand more about the operation and then the safe use of hydrogen as a motor fuel and indoors was kind of really fun to see. So, to the compliments of the Valley, they raved about support for infrastructure and public operations as a business, a large business in Spokane Valley. So I was going to pass that along to some of their council members. And just last, I'd say, mark your calendars. The 1st of March is the annual father-daughter dance hosted at the Marabou Park Hotel. Tickets at libertylakekiwanis.org. They're selling fast. Make plans now. It'll be a fun evening. So thanks.
All right. Councilmember Van Orman.
Yes, we heard a little bit about the lodging tax meeting that we had last Tuesday. We had 9 that were going for the application and a total of 195,572. The committee did go ahead and recommend, so this will be before you at your council meeting in March. Should be the first meeting.
Councilmember Kurtz.
Wanted to give a fairly quick update on the rules of procedure subgroup, and then kind of how that might dovetail into a couple of the other committees. So Councilmember Kennedy and Councilmember Spencer and I have been working on the rules of procedure. And through some of the questions that we had in that process, I started looking at other cities' rules of procedure and realized that a lot of cities actually have a governance manual. And a governance manual is a lot longer and a lot more in depth than what we have. It outlines things that we already do or have been silent on in our own rules of procedure, but actually lays it all out for us. And I wanted to see if there was consensus among the council, either for that particular group or other volunteers, because it's a very long document, who would, if you guys would be interested in pursuing and learning more about a governance manual and a draft of one in the future. That's my inquiry.
Councilmember Dunn.
Annie, I'm grateful for the efforts, and I would be interested. I think the city's growing, and I think the need for procedural action to support our council is growing as well. That's a natural step.
Councilmember Kennedy.
I also support that. Even though we spend a lot of time on it, we'd be spending more time, but I think it'd be advantageous to the city to have that.
And so this would include also the code of ethics?
So some cities have their social media and ethics policy referenced. Some have it in it. Some also have the commission appointment process in it. So I think there's the opportunity for us to weave all of those things we've been working on into one grand document, and have different people working on different parts of it, or the same people working on different parts of it. So if there's not any objection to it, I would like to keep working on that. And I don't know if Councilmember Spencer and Councilmember Kennedy want to continue on that group, or if there's anybody else that really loves policy that would love to write things.
Sean, quick question. Can you give us an idea of how the manuals either comply with state law, or are they enforceable? Are they just like a guide? How does that all work?
Well, it depends on what you put in there. Like right now, certain things are passed by ordinance, which has the effect of law.
Right.
Rules of procedure are not. Those are just rules for the council. They're passed by resolution. So it depends on what pathway the council decides to take. Certainly, you have the code of ethics, which has a law effect to it as opposed to the procedure. So I think it's too early to tell exactly what that looks like because like Annie has said, it's a very lengthy document and can or cannot incorporate various things. So it just depends on which path you want to take. And then, if there's an understanding of which way to go, then we can evaluate more specifically as to, what that looks like.
But we can make it enforceable.
Yeah, it's all enforceable. It's just in effect of whether it has a force of law behind it, like an ordinance,
Right.
or does not, right? It just like the rules of procedures, for example. So it just depends on which path you want to take.
Okay. Anybody else? Sounds like we're good on that.
Are you guys still my volunteers?
Yeah.
Or, because I've got Jed and Mike and I can only have two.
Yeah, I guess my question is, is there a best practice for compiling this? Is it best to maybe start with a couple of other cities and kind of meld it to make it our own, or?
At least from the brief interaction that I've had with Annie, I think that's kind of the discussion is taking what other cities, similar sized cities or other jurisdictions have with regard to a governance manual and saying, do these sections apply to the city? If they do apply, how do they apply? What other areas do we currently already have in force that do we want to make that part of the governance manual or not? So, I think that's part of the valuation process that would be going on in making those decisions.
So what I've done so far is I've read the governance manuals of 25 cities and I've lumped things back and forth. And what I would move forward would be things that were really consistent among cities, things that we already had in ours, things that I know that we already do that we just never called out. And then there would also be some this or that for us to discuss. An example of one of the things that Councilmember Spencer and I talked about, we talked about ballot initiatives last year. There's some cities that don't do this. There's some cities that do this. So we would have a discussion as a council about how we want to move forward with that. And we would put what we want in our governance manual. Same thing. There's several different things about the interview process for council vacancies. A lot of cities do that differently. So we could talk about how we want to do that. I think it would give us the opportunity in that process to think about what we want to do, what's worked well for us, what could we change, what could we update. So I think it'd be interesting for all of us to look at what some of the other cities do and see what works for us.
Mm-hmm. Any objections to that? Okay.
No.
All right. Anybody else with the council reports or inquiry? All right. As we mentioned, the mayor is not here, so we'll look forward to her report at the next meeting. And we're to city administrator, Mark.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I'm going to try to keep this as brief as possible so we can keep the meeting moving along. Just looking at a couple of the events that are happening. The reason that I'm not with you tonight is I'm traveling to the City Action Days event that the Association of Washington Cities is hosting in Olympia. So we'll get a chance to meet with our legislative delegation and really talk about some of the pieces of legislation that are tied to our or to council's legislative agenda that, if you'll recall, you all adopted some time ago. And so that'll be happening over the next couple of days. I wanted to call everybody's attention to a week from tonight, the 25th. We will be noticing a special meeting to discuss the library community center project. This is a follow-up to last meeting's discussion about this. And so that'll be at City Hall. And then finally, the strategic investment plan workshop. We've talked about this a couple of times. We've settled on a date of Tuesday, March 25th. That is the fourth Tuesday of March. And so that's in between meetings. And so as we talked about in the past with kind of the new schedule, that gives us an opportunity to fill one of those special meeting nights with a specific topic. And this is designed to get us a better operating position, so to speak, as we consider and make decisions about capital investment. And so that's what that's going to be covering. And we'll get you more information about that between now and then. And we still need to determine a location for that, but it's going to be on Tuesday, March 25th. Before we move on to the next two items, any questions about those events?
Doesn't appear to be.
Okay, really quickly on emergency management. This is something that we have called out specifically in our strategic plan. It's something that we have a individual key result in the plan identified as something that we're going to track and report out on. And I wanted to talk this evening a little bit about it for a couple of reasons. One is that earlier today, I had the opportunity to attend the Spokane County Office of Emergency Management hosted what was called the Cascadia Subduction Zone Symposium. And this was basically a seminar to talk about what would we do on the east side of the Cascades if the Cascadia Subduction Zone earthquake happens, right? And so we met with about 100 emergency management types from around the region and kind of had that conversation. And so that's an example of an extreme event. But our emergency management focus needs to include how we would be plugged into a response to that kind of event, but it also needs to cover what we would do in much smaller and localized events. And so we've been working with the entire staff to get some base level training scheduled and completed so that we can take the next step of working with the county and updating what's called our continuity of operations plan and our emergency operations plan so that we can start scheduling some tabletop exercises to practice what we say we're going to do when one of these disasters strikes. And so this is not a quick proposition, right? You don't, we can do certain things quickly, but we can't increase our capability to respond to emergencies overnight. This is a process that takes time, it takes training, it takes people focused on it. And so I wanted to give you all an update considering that there is a question on our survey that specifically asks people what are their impressions about the city's ability to respond to emergencies and disasters. And that's the one that's tied into our strategic plan. So you're going to be hearing more about this going forward, but I wanted to give you a brief update as to what was happening so that you can consider what we're doing and maybe provide us with some ideas or directions about certain things that you would like to see. So I will pause there and ask for any questions about that topic before moving forward.
And Mark, just to clarify, we're talking about emergencies not only in the city, but emergencies that could impact the city?
That would be a both and, Mayor Pro Tem, yes.
Okay. Councilmember Van Orman.
Thanks, Mark, for bringing that up. Yeah, Cascadia, we talked about way back when I was mayor. The fact is, it's supposed to be happening anytime. So nice to be able to coordinate both our police, fire, scope volunteers and volunteers as a whole, including our elementary, high schools and junior high to find out safe places. So looking forward to that conversation.
Absolutely.
Anybody else? Doesn't look like it, Mark.
Okay, and with that, we will move on to the last topic, and there is a slide deck that goes with this, and this is really more of just information to help guide the conversation. We previously touched on this at the February 4th meeting, I believe it was, and this is just an update to that conversation to provide some more specifics. We were specifically talking about the Little League's request for some sports fields in the city and the associated fees. And so before we get into that piece of it, Evan, if you'll go to the next slide, I just wanted to level set here and remind everyone that back on December the 17th, when the council voted to adopt the budget, the fee schedule for 2025 is part of that. And so the fee schedule that is specifically related to the ball fields and sports fields that the city owns and operates are illustrated here. As you'll see, there's several line items, and particularly with what we call the ball fields, there is both a nonprofit rate and a for-profit rate. I've only provided you with the nonprofit rate here because we're talking about the Little League, who is a nonprofit. And so you can see the hourly rates and some of the other conditions. And this is pretty much word for word out of the fee schedule. And then down below, we separate out what are called the sports fields in a different section of the fee schedule. And you can see there that there is a nonprofit rate per hour that would apply to the Little League. And then regardless of whether it's a for-profit or nonprofit, in both categories, there's an administrative fee that you see listed there. So this is the fee schedule that anyone who fits into these categories would be subject to when they make a request for use of any of these fields. And so with that, Evan, if you can go to the next slide. If we talk about, and this goes back to the original conversation, the original request that came in from the Little League included this. This is a essentially verbatim account of what the request contained, and you'll see there that it made up over 5,000 hours of request at each of those fields hourly rate and that extended price. And if you go down to the bottom right there, that is a big number. And so, you know, that is sticker shock territory, right? And so we can understand that. Evan, if you go to the next slide, since the last conversation, and the Little League officials had been meeting with the recreation folks throughout this entire time. And so they've since revised their request, and you can see the revised request here. And so the total based on their revised request is somewhere in the neighborhood of 9,500. And so I'd like to pause there. I do have a comparison with what the 2024 picture looked like. But before we go to that, I'm going to pause here and ask if there's any other information that needs to be supplied, either through questions by council members. I don't know if Mikkel is on the line, if he's got any context that he'd like to add at this point.
I do have one quick question, Mark. The numbers that we're seeing on this graphic and the one before is just for the spring season, or is it for the entire year?
So this goes through when you look at the request, it starts in March, and they've got it itemized and goes through essentially October.
Okay, so it is for both their spring and their fall.
If that constitutes that time period, yes.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Councilmember Kennedy?
I do have one question. Mark, looking at these fees that we charge, my assumption is that we charge a fee only to try to offset some of the expenses we have of maintaining the field. Is that correct?
Well, there's an offset to the maintenance that's part of that, and then there's an asset of the community that is being used by someone else, therefore it isn't available to others aspect of it. And so both of those things go into the fee. And from a fee perspective, if you look out over the state and all of the municipalities across the state that operate sports fields, our fees are among the lowest that you're going to see. They're very reasonable rates, but it's both components, council member.
Yeah, my assumption always been is that, it's part of in my mind, a public service that we provide that there. And of course, our fields are not set up for profit.
That's correct.
Very good. Thank you.
Mark, you may be getting to this, but, and cut me off if you are, but I wanted to just look at, I know we have the hourly numbers up there, but I wanted to look at the total cost last year versus this year, because I think what ended up happening, correct me if I'm wrong again, is that the last year number was very much lower than this year's number, and that's where the consternation is. However that happened, whether it was through a miscalculation of the numbers or what have you, that there's a huge increase year over year, and that's what the Little League is concerned about.
Sure. And to address that, I think it's probably easiest to use the comparison with the 2024 numbers to kind of illustrate what the difference was. And so, Evan, if you can back up one slide to the, and I want to start here. So the 2025 original request, you see the number of hours and you see the extended price. Now, Evan, if you go to the 2 slides down, so now looking at the 2024 original request that came in, you actually see that some of the fields, they requested more hours, but for fewer fields, and when all of that shook out, it was fewer hours. And when you applied the hourly rate in 2024, you got an extended price of 45,780. And so the difference between price from 2024 to 2025 was about 7,000. The rates changed and the number of hours changed. The big difference between 2024 and previous years, to be perfectly honest, and this year, is that amount was never paid to reserve those fields. And so, Evan, if you go to the next slide, what was actually paid by the Little League in 2024 was $3,295. And as you can see, the difference between on this table and the previous tables is this hourly rate is the extended price divided by the number of hours that they actually used. It's not the price, or it's not the hourly rate that is in the fee schedule. And so you can see those hourly rates that were actually paid are far below even the discounted rates for nonprofits that were part of the fee schedule. And so it was a combination of different things, some historic practice that really shouldn't have been happening, combined with, and I'm making an assumption here, the Little League and I would do this too. I want to make sure that I can put a team on the field when I need to put a team on the field. So they were reserving time that I don't think they really intended to pay that full amount on. And so the combination of all of those things led to this gross difference between the requested amount and the actual use. And so going forward, we would expect the number, and Evan, if you back up one slide again to the 2025 revised request, to be something more close to this number, the 9480.
Which are there any questions before I jump in again? So Mark, the 3295, then to 9480, if that's what it ends up being, is the sticking point. It basically is tripling or almost tripling.
Yes, the amount that they actually paid in 2024 versus what their revised request is in 2025. Yes. Those hours in 2024, though, were deeply discounted beyond even what was allowable by the fee schedule.
So, okay. So I guess my question is then, other than bankrupting them, what is a way we can address this? To at least try to ease it in, regardless of whose fault it was or what invoices went back and forth. I guess my concern is that if we don't do anything, we're basically telling our local Little League folks that either they got to pay triple or not use our fields.
I mean, staff's position is that council sets the rates and staff applies the rates. And so even though that wasn't happening in 24 and prior, that's the only position that staff can take. So council can decide through a change in the ordinance to adjust the rates. That's perfectly within the council's prerogative to do.
Can we go back to the 2024 one? So the hourly rate that we charged them last year was anywhere from $1.20 to $4.42. And then can you go forward to the 2025 one?
And keep in mind that that 2024 invoice was submitted after the season. So in other words, they came back to us and said, here's what we actually used. And so the other piece of this that I want to make sure that everyone understands is that those fields were reserved for that, all of those hours that constituted that $45,000 request. And so other people were not able to use the fields because they were all reserved by the Little League, but they only ended up using whatever was displayed on the slide that Evan just showed on the 2024 invoice. And so that's a huge difference of time that those fields were made unavailable for others because they were reserved.
Councilmember Kennedy.
I do recall when we were setting this up that there was questions from other leagues or the possibility that too many hours were being allocated to one organization and didn't leave it sufficiently open to someone else. And it looked like it gave the impression that we just didn't have the space for everybody. So I can sort of see that if they were requesting a tremendous amount of hours they didn't use, it did open it up where other individuals could not use it. And for me, it's not so much the motivation of the dollar amount that the field could have been used and it was not. I'm not sure how we could work on that.
Councilmember Spencer.
The 2024, wasn't it 1,100 hours what they actually used? So they're anticipating reducing it by that percentage down to 754 for this year.
Based on their revised request, yes. They would have to answer how they derived this revised request, but yes.
So I think the point that Councilmember Spencer is making is that they're reducing their hours from 1139 to 754, but the amount that we're charging is going from 3295 to 9480.
Right. And I'll reiterate that in this case, staff is applying the adopted rate to the number of hours. For whatever reason, in 2024, when the Little League came to reconcile and pay, we did not charge them the correct rates.
The city didn't.
Correct.
Councilmember Kurtz.
Mark, do you have data on what we would have charged them? Was that one of the other ones if they had used all their time? Or
I would have to
the right rate, I guess.
I would have to go back in we can probably make a reasonable estimation. Part of the trouble is I don't know, 2024 rates were broken out between practice field and game field. And I don't know how many of those hours were practice versus game. So I'm really not positive. We can probably make an estimate that would be pretty close, but we haven't done that yet.
Councilmember Kurtz, do you want to do a follow-up to that?
I did, but I forgot it. So go ahead.
Councilmember Van Orman.
Well, I could say from old school what we used to do, but I won't. It would be a really good idea to go ahead and revisit this. Just to get to some comparisons of what everybody else is doing and make sure that it's a right fit. We do want to go ahead and be welcoming to our little leagues, and for that matter, any other event that wants to be open for the public.
Councilmember Kurtz, and then
Yeah, I think that was my question was, Mark, you said that our rates are lower than other cities. I would be interested in seeing a rate comparison of the fields that are around us, just to know kind of where we're at, if we need to make an adjustment or not.
Sure. And we would be happy to provide kind of a regional comparison.
Mark, isn't it the case that there are some other cities that actually don't charge anything?
That's possible. I've not encountered that with the ones that I've surveyed, but that's certainly possible. And we can search with those parameters in mind to see if we can scoop into the analysis, any of those that may not be charging anything.
Councilmember Dunn.
Mark, this is a request from one patron. Were there other patrons billed on the field last year? Do you remember?
That is a question I would need Mikkel or someone in the Parks Department to help clarify. I suspect the answer is yes. I don't have that data in front of me though.
I'm just trying to, yeah, I wouldn't put you on the spot, but I would reflect that there were probably other billing events on that field. And I'm curious as to whether we steeply discounted those other payers or whether they actually paid the posted rate during the year last year.
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't know the answer to it now, but we can find that out.
Okay.
PJ isn't here, is he? Oh, he is. Can we, PJ is the president of their league. If it's all right with the council, we'll have him come online for a second and explain their situation. Does that work for everyone?
Can you identify what the league is called?
The Spokane Valley Liberty Lake Softball League, or Baseball League, sorry.
Council members, can you hear me?
We can.
All right, thanks. Thanks, guys. Appreciate the time and the discussion for sure. Yeah, I mean, I think the information displayed is fairly accurate and similar to what we have seen. I think that the 2025, the screen that's up right now is a little bit misleading because it's not the total of what we're anticipating paying. This is just for the rental hours. We're also requesting to have field prep, to drag and line the fields prior to games on both Diamonds Fields and Rookie. 98 specific times, so that's another $7,300. And that's, I mean, at the end of the day, that's really kind of beside the point. I think there was definitely sticker shock when we sat down with Mikhail and worked through the numbers. And I think historically we've kind of maybe made a blanket requests and I would say probably unfairly, with the hours that were posted earlier on in this presentation. There was definitely just kind of maybe some excessive requests. Obviously, we're not using the fields all day, every day. And I wasn't part of those requests, but all that aside, working with Mikhail, we've fine-tuned when exactly we would need the fields. And so, the request is, as it sits right now, I think is quite accurate for what we are anticipating needing. The challenge that we had when we sat down with Mikhail and his team were registrations are currently open. They're open for about another 3 weeks. And at the time we couldn't adjust registration fees. We couldn't go back to parents and ask them to pay more because the registrations were open and we already had the fees posted. So that was one of our biggest challenges, is we weren't sure how to communicate forward with the families how to guarantee fields. The challenge we have, one of the challenges that this league has historically had, is fields. We look back at 2017, 2018, we had 200 or so athletes. Right now we're pushing 600 or more athletes every season. And these numbers that are in front of you are only for the spring season. This is not for fall. Mikhail and I haven't worked out the fall numbers yet. But for spring season only, we're right now we're anticipating. Last year we had about 600. We're anticipating right about that many. And that's 45 total teams. And to successfully field games for 45 teams, that requires us to have at least 13 fields 6 days a week to field and provide a good quality product and as you guys have mentioned, as a nonprofit. So it's a challenge for us. You know, we are in our area, in the Spokane area, we are the highest. We charge the most as far as registration fees, and that's a challenge for us because we want to be competitive from a sports perspective, but we also want to be competitive from a cost perspective. And we can play interleague games, so we can play other districts, or we can play, other leagues within the city, but we're kind of stuck with what we have. So we parents can't go outside our league because the league is based on demographics and the schools the children go to. So they don't have an option to go outside of our league to try to find a less expensive league. So our challenge is how do we balance all that in addition to equipment and uniforms and really what we have to pay Little League National to put a good quality product on the field. And so that's where we're challenged, and where we we're coming to the city council to kind of walk through what those options might be. And I understand there's, it's 754 hours is a lot. 98 times to drag and line the field is a lot, but it's a really good quality product. And we've seen, over the last 5-6 years, we've seen immense growth in our league, and we want to continue to see that growth and promote the game and the sport, and really help mature these kids and help them grow. So I guess that's my diatribe.
Thanks, PJ. Any questions for PJ? Councilmember Spencer.
Yeah, I guess I'm just trying to understand, just from a business perspective, trying to determine what your costs are and everything. What was the basis for, obviously we can see that 2024 was wonky. Like the rates that were paid weren't anywhere near what the posted rates were. So I guess I'm trying to understand at what point the disconnect took place, if it was just that the city has historically never charged what they actually said they were going to charge on the posted rates, or that's what I'm trying to, I'm having a hard time understanding what the basis was for what you might be paying for 2025.
Is that a question for me?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a good question. We based our numbers as far as register the cost for registration for each division. We based those numbers on really on 2024's numbers, as far as the equipment costs, uniform costs, field costs, all those things. Our registration started January 1st, and we didn't receive updated field cost, rental cost information until shortly thereafter. Michaela and I were working on, we were discussing field rentals and all those things, but he wasn't able to communicate the new cost structure until the new year. And so we had already initiated registration. We want to try to get ahead of it, because we are competing with Spokane Indian Youth Baseball. So we are trying to provide, there is competition out there. And so we like to try to get registrations open early so parents can prepare for their year. And so we based our costs on 2024's costs. And because, as I mentioned, we are the most expensive Little League in our area, the board voted to maintain our costs from 2024 to 2025.
Additional questions for PJ? Councilmember Ball.
So what is the registration fee for kids in this league?
It depends on the division, but it ranges from, I don't have the numbers exactly, but I think it's between $50 $50 to $60 for T-ball, up to a little over $200 for the upper division, which is majors, or intermediates, which is 13, 14-year-olds.
And you said you need 16 fields, 6 days a week, right?
We need
13.
13 fields, 6 days a week.
Okay.
Additional questions for PJ? All right, thank you, PJ.
Yeah.
Very
Yeah.
much. Oh, I'm
Thank
sorry.
you all.
1 second,
Thanks.
PJ.
So
Councilmember
PJ,
Spencer.
Oh, yeah, no worries.
Follow up to my earlier question.
You
So
bet.
were you not aware of the posted fee schedule, or was this always just based on whatever you had been charged?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know if I can clearly answer that for you. We had the documentation from the past as far as what the fields cost per hour, and it was a different fee structure prior to 2025. I can't remember exactly the structure of it, but we base it off of those numbers. I can't really answer your question very very well, unfortunately.
So Councilmember Spencer, I can shed some light on that. Evan, if you can go back to the 2025 original request slide. So this table would in effect be in a form that that the Little League or anyone else who is requesting to reserve the fields would submit. So this form would be submitted with this information on it from the Little League to the city. So that's how those numbers were derived in 2024 and earlier.
But so I guess help me then, Mark. So why did we invoice them for a different amount then?
Because that historically had been the practice for some reason that I can't explain. Like I mentioned in one of the email exchanges, the staff made unauthorized discounts to the Little League for years prior to 2025.
Councilmember Spencer.
Well, I'll just make the comment that clearly there's some misunderstandings here. Rates have been posted for the league currently. It's my understanding, Mark, were the rates for the field prep, have those been consistent, or were those raised this year?
So Evan, if you go back to the first slide in this presentation, I believe they're $75 for the nonprofit schedule. And those are for the ball fields. We don't do field prep on the sports fields. I want to say that rate went down between 2024 and 2025, but I don't have the 24 schedule in front of me.
Okay, well, I guess the point I want to make is, we've got a hard cost for the field prep. There's somebody that has to be paid to go and do the field prep. From a standpoint of the hourly rental, it seems like we should be able to, as a council, come together and say, let's kind of make a compromise this year, knowing that there was some confusion based on what they had been charged in the past, whether that was right or wrong. But at this point, it seems like we do probably need to make some sort of adjustment for this year. And considering the fact that they've been able to sit down together, dial in what the actual hours they plan to use, so that they're not taking up hours which other patrons could come and rent those fields. That would be my suggestion.
Councilmember Dunn.
Yeah, I'm also ready for a one-time write-down or an agreement to a price concession, but I don't have enough information to support that discussion right now.
Councilmember Ball.
Yeah, one thing I would like to say is if they do reserve fields and don't show up for whatever reason, maybe there could be a fine or a penalty of some sort, because that's not fair to other users for a field to just sit there because someone didn't show up.
Councilmember Kurtz.
I would like to add this to the next agenda as a discussion topic so we can get the information from Mark and the team about the history, about when things are posted and what the city might suggest for an adjusted rate for the complete fee structure, not just Little League, but if we need to do something different for this year, but to have a workshop at our next meeting, that would be my motion.
Second.
Okay, the motion is to have a workshop at our next meeting regarding this issue.
Can I amend my motion?
Yes,
Not our next meeting.
yes, sorry, the March.
Our next
14th.
regular meeting.
Yes. I'm gonna make, I'm gonna propose an amendment to that motion, and that is to continue the workshop at the March 4th meeting, but for the purposes of the spring time period, to take it to what it was in 2024. The cost for that we're charging them. And the reason why I say that is because it was not, they opened up registration on the 1st, but they didn't get the cost of what the field was going to be until after that. So they have parents registering right now who are paying a certain amount based on what they thought the rate was going to be, not what the rate is actually going to be. So for the purposes, or what it could be. So for the purposes of trying to just take care of that component of it, and then come back on the 4th of March and decide, okay, here's the adjustment that we're going to make, or no adjustment, or we're just going to continue the numbers that are on the screen there going forward. That's a very long, convoluted motion, but does everyone understand what I just said?
No.
Okay,
No.
so two components to this. The motion is to continue exactly what Councilmember Kurtz said with the discussion, workshop discussion about what the fees should be and kind of a history of the fees on the March 4th meeting. But the second part of the motion is to, for the time being, have the Liberty Lake Spokane Valley League pay for the Springfields what they paid last year.
So let me
Does that
interrupt for a
make
second. So you're not actually amending her motion. You're actually asking a different motion
Okay,
because you're asking to alter a fee structure. She's just asking to have a workshop
Okay.
about the topic.
Okay.
So why don't we hold off and you can address this first one. And if you
Got
want to
it.
make a second motion, that
Okay.
way we can do that too.
okay, so yes, Councilmember Kurtz.
Did my motion get seconded?
Yes,
Okay.
Councilmember Dunn.
So I think having a discussion about adjusting the rate structure for everybody, not just the Little League, would be part of that discussion on March 4th, just so we're not accused of doing something different for different organizations. And it's only 2 weeks away, so I think that if we can have that discussion at the March 4th meeting, I think it'll be more fair for other community partners.
Can I interject here
Yeah.
for a second? Mark or Kyle, with regard to the fee schedule, was the fee schedule included as part of the budget ordinance, or was the fee schedule part of a separate resolution?
Part of the budget ordinance.
Yep.
So we'd have to have a budget amendment or change to the ordinance in order to make a change in the fee schedule, right?
Yes.
So can I ask a follow-up to that? And the motion's still on the table, but I guess my follow-up is, if that's the case, then we've been violating our own budget ordinances for the past couple of years by not charging the correct amount?
That's correct.
Okay, so the motion on the table is to bring this back as a workshop discussion with more of a history, correct, Annie? And
All
What
the
else?
answers to the.
and all the
questions
answers to
asked
the questions
Earlier.
at the March 4th meeting. Any discussion? Councilmember Dunn had seconded it.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries 7-0. So I'll make the motion then separate, is that right? And I don't know if this is going to go anywhere, but we'll try. For the purposes of the spring field reservations, that they be the same as last year, but it sounds like that needs a budget.
Well, if you're gonna change the fee structure is set by ordinance, which is why I was confirming. So if you want to change the fee structure, you got to change the ordinance in order to allow
Right.
that fee structure to be different.
But if I'm not changing the fee structure, if I'm just making a one-time, can we do that with a one-time motion?
I think it's problematic if you
Yeah,
do that.
okay. All right, I'm just gonna withdraw that. So we'll move forward at the March 4th meeting. I do have a concern, though. We're gonna get to the point, if we don't make a decision at that meeting, that they're not gonna have any other options, because their registration, I think, closes on the 6th or the 7th, something like that, maybe even sooner,
What month?
March.
Oh.
So
Oh.
if we say, no, we're going with what it was last year, then they gotta come up with an extra 15 grand-ish.
Mayor Pro Tem, we can propose an emergency ordinance
Okay,
for consideration.
okay. Anything else on that topic? Anything else, Mark, under your report?
No, Mayor Pro Tem, that concludes my report.
Okay, thanks very much, Mark. We are up to Parks and Arts Commission.
Hi, I'm Katie Ferris, representing Parks and Arts tonight. And we have some slides. There you go. So our current projects that we're finishing up, the Orchard Park electrical box, we got that upgraded and we're working on getting a special art wrap for the box. And then the Rocky Hill Smarty board is going to be installed this spring. Okay, next slide. Okay. So this year, the Pavilion Park playground equipment, we're getting out some information to the Community Engagement Committee to get input from the public. It's due to be remodeled next year in 2026. So we're going to try to get a lot of input from maybe people at the farmers markets, at some of our events, some information from the kids at the schools around here to see what they'd like at the playground and the parents. So this year is kind of our getting all the feedback of what people want. So when we replace the equipment, it'll be exactly what everybody wants. So. Okay, next slide. This is just some ideas of some new recreational programming that Mikhail's coming up with some new things around different seasons. So we're just, he's just kind of presenting some new ideas for classes. Okay, next slide. And then you heard last meeting about our award for the bronze level for a bike-friendly community. And so they gave us a lot of recommendations to help improve our bike-friendly community status. And so we're going to, working with Ben Turner and our advisory committee that we started last year, we're going to take all the recommendations and get different volunteers in the community to see how we can develop and improve our bike-friendly community. And so there's a few of the things that we put on the slide there, but basically coming up with a master plan along with our street plan, increase bicycle parking, expand education in our community about bike safety with the schools and with drivers, and develop kind of a community bike map for people to have safe routes to go to the different parks in Liberty Lake. So we're also promoting bike to school days and bike to work days in collaboration with the fire department, their safety division. We have bike safety assemblies, and the local fire or local police officers also help. We all collaborate together to promote those events. So it's really a fun, exciting time for Liberty Lake. Any questions?
Oh, just a comment. I'm happy that you're going to do a map, a bike map. Yeah, I found myself on sides of roads and I don't feel comfortable, so that's great.
Councilwoman Chris?
My question was on the equipment replacement. I think Liberty Lake Elementary is also doing an equipment replacement of their school. And I wonder if there's any sharing economy of scale you might be able to get in with on them. I don't know where they're at in their process.
Okay.
But they were looking at replacing some of their equipment as well. And so maybe not getting the same equipment in the same year, like avoiding
Right.
duplication or doing something different. But I think that might be something to look into as well.
Yeah, we'll check into that for sure.
Councilmember Dunn?
I'm just grateful for your efforts, Katie. The work you've done is great. Thanks.
So we got a good start on it.
All right.
Say there's
Go ahead, Councilmember Van Horn, sorry.
there's a few clubs within this community that you might want to approach. We might be able to help.
Okay, sounds great.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
All right, Planning Commission, Mr. Mann.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Cargill and Council. Thanks again for allowing me to update you on where we are with planning. As you know, we're still working heavily on the comp plan revision that is due by next year. We're spending a lot of time on that. But we're also dealing with concurrent issues that are coming up through the process of development and business applications and those kind of things as well. So we'll keep you informed about that. We did recently have a housing policy workshop with the Leland Consulting Group. It was rather intensive and rather detailed. I'm not going to go into all the details because frankly, you're going to see them at some point in the future anyway, but I'll kind of give you an overview. House Bill 1220, as you know, dictated a lot of different issues about housing, of the different types of housing, different levels, and that we must have adequate provisions in our plan for all income levels. And so that is a lot of what we're focusing on at the moment. There are a number of barriers to housing affordability in Liberty Lake. One, which most people don't really think about, is topographic. Because Legacy Ridge is a 30% slope, that is very, very difficult to develop and very expensive to develop. And I'll address that in a little bit in a minute as well. But that is one of the things that we have to be concerned about. But there's also regulations that have to do with zoning and density, with ADUs, if you will, granny flats that we're all familiar with, that we don't have a lot of regulation on. Both their size and occupancy, we're in violation of the law with those. And off-street parking is another issue that we have, that we are out of compliance with 1220 on that. So we are really beginning to look at this in two ways. One is there are things that we're going to have to change that are mandatory to comply with the RCW. We don't have a choice. A good example of that is you're going to see a second reading tonight about emergency housing and supportive housing. Those were mandatory changes. We really didn't have a choice. So there are others that are coming that we won't have a choice as well. However, there are still others that are optional. And we are going to take a look at those in terms of what can we really do? For the best example I can give you is we have a requirement for either patios or some type of balcony with multifamily housing. They're recommending that we take a look at maybe rescinding that and seeing if that might give us more density and more affordable housing by removing that design requirement. One of the last things we looked at with them is the fact that we are very racially disparate in Liberty Lake. In fact, we are 93% white in this city, and that's actually up. The county is actually down in terms of the white race. That's not something we can specifically manage, but we use race as one of the categories to figure out housing and income levels, because many of the people that are challenged are from minorities, as we all know. And so that's one of the issues that we're really having to take some time with and spend a good bit of time on. So that we're still waiting through. You will see a lot of the details coming. But on a more positive note, we had 2 design reviews recently. One is we approved the design for Topgolf. You are going to be very proud to have that facility in this city. It is gorgeous. I don't know if you've had a chance to see it, pictures of it, but it is really going to be an excellent attraction for the city. And I think we will be very proud of what they're planning. So that is one thing. The other thing is I sent many of you pictures of a wall that was being proposed for a development called Legacy Heights. We really didn't have anything in the code that could stop that wall. However, the design review committee voted against approving it because of the aesthetics of the city and the fact that it would be a huge negative impact we felt to the city. The good news is the developer agreed with us and is willing to modify. We won't have a 65-foot tall wall. They're going to step it up and they will plant all of the different levels of it to make it a much more attractive. It has to be done in order to develop that hillside. I mentioned earlier, 30%, it's very, very expensive to develop a 30% slope. And so that it'll have to happen, but they are coming back to us with a different design. And I was very happy to see that the developer was willing to accede to it. They could have continued, but they chose to try to do something a little different, a little more aesthetically pleasing. So that's the end of my report unless you have questions. Yes, ma'am.
Where is the step wall going to be?
It's going over on the southwest corner of Liberty Lake Drive and Appleway.
Oh, okay, okay.
Kind of behind the Chevron.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, yes.
Yeah, behind
Yeah.
the Chevron.
Yeah.
Okay, okay.
Behind the businesses there. And then there will be a road that goes up and they will be putting apartments and some commercial entities up there as well.
Okay, it wasn't that what Jake's Townhomes is what it was called? Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, it's the name of it was Legacy Heights
Oh, okay.
and it's primarily apartments. Other questions?
Oh.
Yes, ma'am.
And when is Topgolf planning to like?
We don't know the answer to that just yet. They were waiting on this approval to finish the planning segments and getting it done. Hopefully they'll be in place by next year.
Lisa or Joe, can you email us those pictures?
Yeah.
Oh,
that.
we'd be happy to. Okay, on the Topgolf, we do have though. Yeah,
Yeah,
Topgolf, we,
No,
no,
the
no,
top,
Topgolf, we do have.
Yeah, yeah, I'd like to see.
She
that.
had me confused. So, okay.
not the Great Wall.
So, yeah, you're gonna be really pleased with, I mean, there's a lot of wood on the exterior, stained wood, blue colors, really very it's a knockout
Okay.
building.
Oh,
Yes, ma'am.
There's just one, which way are you hitting to? Like which direction
East.
hitting east?
Mm. Okay.
North.
Yeah, it's
Oh.
at an angle a bit, but it's mostly east, northeast.
Yeah, yeah. Extra points for that. Councilmember Ball.
Lisa, can you send that to all of us? Okay, thank you.
All
Any
right.
other questions?
Thanks, Joe. Thanks, Joe. All right, anybody from Sewer and Water District online? Doesn't look like they're here in person. Okay. Then we will skip on past.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Yeah, Mark.
Mayor Pro Tem, can I suggest that we move the facilities master plan up on the
Yeah.
workshop schedule? We've got folks in the audience
Hmm.
that are here to help facilitate that discussion, and the other two we don't.
Okay, anybody object to that? All right, I'll just make a quick note that it is 7:40 and we're already up to workshop discussions. So the advantage of starting the meeting at 6. All right, so we will start with 9C, the facility masters plan. Mark, or who's going to lead this?
So I'll just very quickly introduce and then turn it over to Ben. Council, as you know, this is a project that we've been working on for a while. It was included in the capital budget for both 2024 and 2025 through the opportunity of going through the project management facilitation contract with the library project. We were able to leverage that and get some work done a little bit faster using that contract vehicle. And so we're at the point now where BCRA, our partner, has worked for several months and they're going to explain the process to come up with the results that they're going to present to you tonight in partnership with the city. And so to go through all of that and to introduce the team, I'll turn it over to Ben Turner, the Public Works Director.
All right, thanks, Mark. Evan, we got the slides ready to go. All right, there we go. Can you go to the next slide real quick? All right, so good evening, council. I'm just gonna go through just a little bit of the agenda here, but first I wanted to recognize Nikki Fulduris from BCRA and Jonathan Miller from Turner and Townsend. So I'm gonna kick this off and kind of turn it over to them to do most of the detailed stuff. So like Mark said, we've been the schedule. We're gonna go through that. Like we've been working on this the last 3 months. I'll do a quick recap, some of the big rocks that we've noted, we've discovered as we've gone through this process. Then I'll turn it over to Nikki to go over some of the more detailed sections. Evan, if you could go to the next slide, please. So I think I've shown this to you before. This was the complete schedule for the master plan. We started in October, did our first review of test fits. There were 3 rounds of test fits. We started out the first round in October, worked on that for a few weeks. That was presented to staff. Staff also filled out, each department filled out a survey with showed needs, both with personnel. The intent was to go out what each department would look like in the future out to about 20 years. So that info was provided to BCRA. They then worked in some test fits. Big surprise, we don't have enough room. That's one of the big things we found. City Hall is not big enough for a staff, for a city of 21, 22,000, whatever we end up with it filled out. So that was a big finding at the beginning. So they gave us a lot of different options. I think we came up with 6 or 7 different ways that we could fit. We found some ways that didn't fit. We found some other ways having to separate different departments once they grew. So that was one of the initial findings. So narrowed that down a little bit to the second test fit just before Christmas. Then did another round of that, some meetings with Mark and I, and really honed it down to the 2 different concepts that we're going to share with you tonight. And then here we are at the end of the schedule. So go next slide, please. So the facilities that we looked at our existing city hall, we looked at the police library building, and we looked at the legacy church building. We didn't look at any new footprint for the city as part of this effort. Obviously, we've got this workshop next week to kind of look into that, and we kind of once we get into some of the sequences, we do mention that a little bit. This does include preliminary cost analysis, not quite as detailed as we went with the library, but we do have quite a bit of cost analysis to take a look at what it would cost to do each one of these concepts. We narrowed that down to the 2 concepts before we started doing any of the cost analysis, because we kind of got all the ideas that weren't quite going to work before we started doing that section. And like I said before, we did survey and gather data from each one of the departments for really out to that 20-year point. So each department is looking to grow a little bit each way, depending on all the things that we're going to be doing for the city. Let's see if I make sure I cover all my notes before I turn it over to Nikki. Predominantly, we looked at administrative space as part of this master plan. I submitted data for Public Works. That's more of an operational space. Parks submitted for both their admin functions as well as their operational space. We kind of stayed away from the operational space because those, for one thing, Public Works yard is fairly new. And we've also got a Parks master plan that Lisa's working on that looks at both parks. And then it's got a second phase where we get more of the operational facilities for the parks to take care of all their needs. So that's really the overview of what we've done over the last 3 months. And I'll turn it over to Nikki to kind of go through the next couple steps.
Thank you, Ben. as Mark said, I'm Nikki Poulterus with BSRA, and I've had the privilege of going through the master planning process with all the departments at the city. So if you would go to the next slide, please. So really, once we started to dig into this, I'd like to just highlight, we always want to, as we're going through the planning process, go back to the vision and goals for the project. And these were really gathered through the survey, the data, the meeting with all the departments. You might have remembered that we even met with council members through this process as well. So just high level, kind of starting out with the vision and goals as we worked through the process and making sure that we were adhering to those as we work through this project. So obviously, community connectivity is big. We realize that you guys are serving a lot of people here in the community, ensuring a safe and welcoming environment. So you'll see some of that reflected in the planning diagrams. A flexible and adaptable community space, obviously knowing that you guys are constrained, and making sure that when we are planning, we are looking at the future of these spaces and how they can adapt to many different uses and needs. And then creating a modern aesthetic and timeless equality. You might remember that from the library as well. So again, some of those same goals are through this process as well. Next slide. So has been said, we met with all the departments, and we really started with several different surveys that each of the departments filled out. It gave us an assessment on their future headcount needs, and really this is looking kind of at a 5-year forecast, knowing that you guys are out of space. As simple as that. You've done a really wonderful job making this building work for you up until this point, but it is definitely constraining. And so what this does is it looks at the needs of each of those departments. It highlights the feedback we've received on the needs for private offices, additional workstations for future staff members, conferencing rooms, which are pretty limited. So factoring all that into the test fitting needs. So, and what we did find too is looking at all these additional workstations and offices and conference rooms that really you guys are at a pretty big deficit of needing additional space. So highlighting that between that 45 and 5,000 square feet. Next slide. So this is, has been said, looking at a couple of different sequencing scenarios. So I don't want to get into the cost information too deeply just yet, because we're going to cover that here in a couple other slides. But with each one of these scenarios, it takes into account, you might remember back in September when we talked about the library, what happens when you start moving different departments around. And this is obviously in relation to the library, the city hall departments in this building here, the parks and council chambers. So with concept option number 1, so just starting again with the library building, this was the option that was kind of narrowed in on, and that looks at taking over the existing legacy space, the legacy church building. That would end up leaving room, vacancy in the existing library space for city hall departments to move over, not including the council chambers in that version. And then lastly, this existing building here, relocating parks and having council chambers in that building. So overall, for concept 1, looking at a duration of 6 years and 10.9 million if you kind of look at each building separately. And I will get into the details of each of these plans here. Concept 2 is looking at the city hall departments moving into the legacy church building. So you'll see a difference in the floor plans there. That also includes the council chambers moving over into that building. The parks and community space would end up taking over this existing building. And then we kind of have a placeholder for town square discussion, which is a much bigger effort. So overall, concept 2, looking again at a duration of 6 years, again, not knowing with the town square, there's much more information that needs to be developed there. If we go to the next slide.
Can I ask you a quick question back on that real
Of
quick?
course.
These numbers are just estimates, and they're based on today's dollars, I assume?
Yes.
Okay.
So down there, the February, based on February 2026 bid dates.
Oh, so next year.
Yes, correct.
Okay.
All right. So this plan might look a little familiar to you. Again, this was the one that we presented in September for the library building. Just a quick refresher, what that would do is the library would move over to the Legacy Church building. It would really afford them more opportunity to grow and expand their programming. We worked really closely with Jandy on all their needs, and so this test fit does reflect that initial master planning effort specifically for the library. So I don't know, I'm kind of doing a high level, I'm not going too far into the weeds. Again, just being mindful too of how we're programming into these existing spaces. How are we able to utilize some of the existing infrastructure to keep costs down while providing their needs? So, and again, the Legacy Church building is approximately 14,000 square feet.
How many square feet?
14. So that would give the library ample room to be able to grow and expand. Next slide, perfect, thank you. So this version looks at the City Hall departments moving into the existing library building that shares that building with the police department. We're not going to go into details of the police department tonight. There's much more to be developed on that. So for the purposes of this, what it does look at, it does afford many of the departments to be able to expand and grow for their headcount needs. And so this plan that we are showing does accommodate for that based on the initial survey findings that we have. Other than parks, which I'll talk about here in a moment. And again, just looking at the existing infrastructure, so trying to be mindful of where we're proposing new offices, how we're trying to maintain some of the existing walls, utilize some of the existing storage space to keep costs down. Any questions on this one?
Yeah, so the assumption is here, whatever's being proposed is going to capture that additional space that everybody's asking for, essentially?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, that is correct. I would say other than parks, which parks would be part of a separate building here. So if you go to the next slide. Yes.
Before you hop over, what is the current square footage here versus the existing library?
Yes, so great question. So the current approximate square footage of this building is about 7,500 square feet. And then are you talking about, sorry, going back?
The existing library.
So for the existing library, it's just slightly under 9,000. So with this, again, it does utilize the permitting department would be up front. You'd be able to serve the community. All of these departments, one of the big things that we heard is trying to keep these departments together as a way to ensure that they're working closely with one another. And so being able to fit that within this existing footprint. And I think it was pretty successful from the feedback we received. Everybody seemed pretty happy with the end result here. Yes.
What's hotel mean? What do you mean?
Yes, great question. So hoteling is an additional workstation or office that would afford you some future flexibility. So let's say if you perhaps even wanted to go and touch down, you would have a station to do that. So it does allow for different entities to come in, touch down if they need to in that building. Does that help answer your question? Okay. And then this last plan for what we're calling kind of sequence one would give parks the opportunity to relocate into this building, taking over that wing, giving them enough room to expand and grow with the workstations that are shown there. And then what we're showing in the middle for this existing council chambers would really end up being community space, either reservable or non-reservable community space that could support uses such as lions, iguanas. I think Van Orman, it was your comment, being able to serve different other community entities appropriately and give them the space to do that. So looking at the possibility of converting this into that. And then the council chambers would move into the other wing, being able to expand the footprint there and accommodate for more guests, which was a common theme that we heard from several of the council members as well. Questions on this plan?
The community space, how large are we looking at?
Yes, 1,000 square feet.
Which
Yep.
would accommodate how many people?
I don't have the head count off the top of my head, but I can certainly get. We can certainly get that for you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So the community space basically is right where we're at. then.
Correct. Yeah, and it does. So the intent for that is that this room is obviously set up very nicely for that. I mean, there's technology already in place, so being able to utilize some of the existing infrastructure that's here and have that be able to serve the community. So you're not having to go out and completely demo everything in this room. It's basically kind of set up for that. So we thought that might be a nice idea, especially since it is right off the lobby. You do have the kitchenette right off to the side that can serve it. So being able to even open it up during the summer. So could be a very nice space for the community to utilize. Great, next slide. So option 2 sequencing has a different approach. So this approach looks at the City Hall departments moving over to the Legacy Church building. So what that would mean is the library would stay in its existing building footprint. And or if there was another option for that, exploring that as well. With that, all the departments can successfully fit into this building, including the council chambers, which would allow you up to about 88 guests and could even be used for potentially after hours. So you could have that line of security to lock it down. You wouldn't have to worry about people getting into the administrative departments for the city. And all your restrooms and some of the meeting rooms would be up front as well. So I know this is a lot to digest, you guys. And in this version, it does show quite a bit of future use. So that could even be additional amenity space, but right now we're just showing it as future opportunities for additional headcount for any of the departments to potentially take over.
Can I ask a quick question on that?
Of course.
So as I look at this one, I'm seeing 10 future spots and 3 hotels. And so I guess my question is this building too big for this particular purpose since we've got essentially so much extra flex space?
Yeah, that's a great question. In my opinion, I don't believe it is because I do think with the need for future headcount and being able to expand that, there is opportunity to even add some additional amenity space. I think we're trying to be a bit tight on the meeting space. We could certainly probably offer a little bit more. So looking at some other opportunities for that as well. Originally, we had looked at potentially having parks be part of this, but knowing that their work is definitely central over in this area, it serves them best. And so this would give many of those departments the ability to be able to grow past that, even past the 5-year mark.
I mentioned 10 futures. There's actually 14 on there. I missed 4 of them.
One question would be, right now, we've got facilities that we're renting basically for storage.
Correct, that's,
Would we have enough room inside this building for the storage that's needed for the city?
Wendy, I can't hear you.
Oh, sorry. Talking about storage. We're renting right now other facilities for that. I'm wondering if this building would be able to accommodate that if we.
yeah, so that's a great question. You will see where we did have storage. That was one of the things we were trying to make sure that we were providing ample storage. And that is an existing built out structure in that building that kind of served the church as kind of their storage needs. But to your point, I think we would want to make sure we captured all the offsite storage, but certainly could look at that. Perhaps it's back in that location, and then some of the offices could potentially shift over to.
One more quick question on this one. Some of the heartburn that we've had about relocating the library to this building is the cost to just for code improvements. Is it the same type of cost for this particular purpose as well for the code improvements?
You will, you will have to go through the same process to do code upgrades for this building as well in order to serve this use.
So I think you guys had mentioned that the last meeting that we had on this, that the code improvements were around 3 million. I'm assuming is what I recall.
Sounds
Yeah.
right. I don't have it in front of me.
So the 5 million that you're thinking it would, I think on the first page of this slide, you showed a number that said 5 million for this. So 3 of that 5 would be just for the code stuff.
Let me confirm that. I don't want to mislead you on that number,
Okay.
so. I think there might be one more, yes, just one more plan. So the last plan looks again at parks staying in this building. And in this version, you'll see the difference is that the wing, instead of the council chambers being in this building, moving to that other portion, that it would be again in that Legacy Church building with the rest of the administrative departments. And that could be for future community use. It could be programmed a lot of different ways. Right now, it's open, so we're kind of showing that grayed out. Could certainly serve a lot of different community. So.
One quick follow-up on this one. So roughly the percentage on that, on the Legacy Church building in bringing it up to code was 60% of the total cost. Is it the same on this building? I mean, what kind of costs are we going to be looking at when we start working on this building to make sure it meets code?
Yeah, so that is a great question. I think we're trying to minimize the impacts that we have by looking at the programming that does move over to this building. So, you'll see that we're trying to minimize not touching the restrooms. This community room would try to utilize some of the existing infrastructure. So trying to be smart on that. I don't have an existing cost for you there. But again, just trying to be mindful of what we are programming in this to bring costs down. Okay, with that, I will turn it over to Jonathan to talk about the cost models unless there's any other questions. Okay, great.
Good evening. So I'll keep this brief because this is really a recap of what you've already seen with Nikki going through the floor plans, and you saw a sneak peek of the costs. So just wanted to make a few clarifications to some of these costs. So one of which, keep in mind, these are conceptual cost models because we don't have a design. These are not a detailed cost estimate based off of a design. There's a lot of assumptions buried in here. 2, we already touched on this. I'll just reiterate it one more time. These costs, we're just using a February 2026 bid date as an assumption. We understand not all of these would happen at the same time. If you're wondering what would escalation look like in the future, I'd probably tack on 6% or so. Obviously, we don't know what it will be, but 6% could be a fair estimate right now. And last clarification, these are total project costs. So it does include all construction costs, all your soft costs, so sales tax, design, it's everything. It's the full meal deal. So real quick, running through these. So the 5.7 million, this should be no surprise. This is a recap of what was seen last year for relocating the library to the Legacy Church building, relocating City Hall to the existing library. We're looking at about a $3 million total project cost there. Next slide, please. Moving parks and council chambers here, about a $2.2 million total project cost estimate, and then a $5 million total project cost to relocate City Hall to the Legacy Church building. And you're probably asking, why is that number lower? It's mainly due to the programmatic differences. So construction cost is certainly lower, but a big part of that was also the FF&E budget, the furniture, fixtures, and equipment compared to the library versus the City Hall building. So with that, I think, turn that back over.
So this is the, go to the next slide, Evans, is kind of where we'll end tonight. So I know we've given you a lot to digest. This is really I think the first time we've really talked about City Hall. We've talked a lot about the library, but really not about City Hall. And I think that's something that we really need to take into consideration. Obviously, we can discuss that next week, as well as we talk about the proposed development over there, Town Square for the library and community center. But really open to your thoughts on where we go from here. But just wanted to leave you with that and kind of open it up if anybody wants to ask any more questions. Councilman Wall.
Can you send us all the slides of
Sure.
that?
Yeah, absolutely.
All those different, thank you.
Additional questions? Councilmember Spencer.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. Has staff weighed in on their preferences on these options?
We have, and that's why we got down to two. I mean, as you saw, one layout for the Legacy building and one layout. I'm just speaking about City Hall specifically for the existing library space. There were several different options that were put together or BCRA. Some included different departments over there, kept them over here. You saw the preferred layouts and the preferred departments where they need to stay together tonight.
One question I did have for you, it seems that there's no interest, or at least from what I could see on those slides, there was no interest in having having the Public Works, extra spaces be over at the Public Works yard.
So like I said, we didn't really go into the Public Works yard development as part of the master plan. I've kind of got my own plan kind of going on there, which you'll see a little bit more probably in the CFP for next year. We do need to grow a little bit over there. We need to get out of that trailer we've been in for the last 6 years. So there's some work going on just kind of separately from this, but since we weren't already part of the interdepartmental work that was going on with this effort, we kind of left that out. But there is some additional probably space that needs to be put in up over there just for growth.
Okay. Additional questions, Councilmember Kennedy.
A lot of questions as we move through, maybe not so many of them tonight. I'm pleased to see the options that we have, because I think that's what's important. To be able to look at all those and ascertain which ones make sense, which ones don't. It's easy to look back and say, gee, I'm sure that people will look at this and say, we should have done this years ago. And some will look at it and say, well, it's added to the confusion now. I disagree with that. The things that happened in the past have led us to today. So the important thing is to figure out, where do we move from here? And not looking to the past to say, this should have been done or that should have been done on it. Trying to take this in the last 25 minutes is a lot. Because what we've been working on for a long period of time is that, what are we going to do with this building? What are we going to do with other buildings? And the library wasn't in that picture. Then, of course, it raised to the picture because of the idea of being able to buy the building. And it has a definite need to be able to do something like that and have a community center, which was estimated to be 4,000 to 5,000 square feet. Looking at on the preliminary, what I've seen so far is that it really is confusing to me. What I mean by that is that it doesn't seem logical to me that we would have city council chambers and have all the staff in another building.
I don't disagree.
That is bizarre to me, bizarre. Because then what that would mean is that all the information's over there. Are they physically going to be here? They're going to be on Zoom. If they're here, their office is over there. I just see a lot of confusion with that. What I also see is that the push has been for years now, is that not so much the need of a library, but a library with a community center. That's what we don't have, and that's what's been talked about for years on end. And now what I'm observing here, it's separate. So one of the ideas that was looked at in the past for city center was important to take the library and combine it with the community center. Because if it was separate, it would take multiple employees. Whereas the economy of scale by bringing everything together. So I'm a little confused about that. Actually, I'm not confused, but it was just a nice statement to say. I have great concerns about some of these options. That one, I'm concerned that it'll slow down the process, what we're trying to do. I don't see anything in here that will come up in this next week's discussion. But I see that this is being fractured. That we have a community center here, chambers, it's just very concerning.
No, understand, and I will reiterate that when we started this process back in October, there wasn't necessarily a mandate to look at a community center. So we tried to make some efforts as we went along to see if we could use the space that we already had to accommodate. And I agree, it's not a perfect solution. I think it's a good start. And I think some of those options may yield themselves better to the overall vision that the council wants to go forward.
Well, I'd like to add is that I think you guys have been able to develop in a relatively short period of time is impressive. Okay, it really is. So I really want to go on record to make sure that you understand that. Maybe I don't just agree with everything, but the concept and the time and the effort and the speed that you put this together, impressive.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was just gonna make kind of some of the same comments that first of all, it is very impressive to see all those designs and ideas and everything. I think it really helps lead us into next week's conversation. What I continue to come back to is that specifically is the Legacy Church building and the cost to bring it up to code, whether we do it with a library, whether we do it with city chambers or council chambers and partial city hall or whatever we might do. And so I guess that's a very long way of saying I'd like to see if we can get consensus to at least get an appraisal of that building so that we know what it's worth, so that then we can make a decision to either proceed with something at that building, or maybe the appraisal comes back and it's not what we thought it was going to be, in which case we would want to pursue a different option. So I'm hoping that we can, and perhaps we need a motion for that, but I'm hoping we can do that ASAP so that we could bring that back and say, okay, that we've got this appraisal done. It shows the building's worth whatever it might be worth, 4 million, 2 million, 3 million, whatever. And then that way, at least for me, that would help better inform my decision about whether we want to continue to have something there or just bag that option altogether. But I'm curious if anyone else thinks that. Councilmember Ball or Councilmember Dan.
Ben, the preparation, thanks again for the material. I think it actually complements nicely my perception, which was what to consider in what will be vacated library space. I think this answers for me what the CapEx would be to support the ongoing operation there. So, and I also appreciate how that logically could be sequenced in time, reflecting the eventual growth of the city to need additional spaces. Yeah, we're out now, but not, I'd say, nearly as out as the library is. To the effect of the concepts, which involved council chamber and the location of staff operations. I don't think that having the staff's physical work areas near the council chambers is a concern. Specifically, our examples of attendance here tonight. We don't need physical workstations for staff members to be able to present. So that's not a concern, I guess, in my observations of the concepts. So thanks.
Councilmember Ball.
Yeah, just to what you said about getting an appraisal on the library building. Commercial appraisals take a really long time, don't they?
Legacy building.
What did I say?
Library building.
Oh, I'm sorry,
Yeah,
the legacy building, yeah. But I think commercial appraisals are very slow. So, I mean, if we're going to try to get this moving, that might not be a good option. I don't know.
It's definitely not my expertise. I don't know if Kyle or Mark has more they'd like to add to that particular question.
Are they there? Mark, do you know how long a commercial appraisal takes?
So I can't speak to that. We have the bones to work with based on what WCIA, our property and liability provider, provided last year. So I think that they would get a little bit of a head start on some of that based on the information that was provided to us last year. But actual timeline, I am unsure.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You're not gonna probably get something in 2 weeks if that's what you're thinking. It's
Right.
probably gonna be more like 30 to 60 days.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just depends upon what the availability is and scheduling. But I would say that would be the time frame to at least look at it as a baseline.
Councilmember Kennedy.
I would agree with that 30 to 60 days, but I also believe that we have enough information to be able to look at to get a pretty sound number that we could live with, or have an idea of moving forward. I don't think it's going to be coming in X number of dollars and we miss it by a huge amount. I think that would give us something to work on. You know, we have a lot on our plate over the next few weeks or this whole year to decide where we're going with this. And I think it's, expedited. I would make a motion that we, tonight, put in that we have the building appraised. To what extent, we can look at that. If we're gonna go for a full-fledged evaluation, fine, but I think we can do some interim work to find. Because realize, when we bought that building, to my knowledge, we didn't have a full-fledged evaluation to make that decision. So that would be on motion.
I'll second. Discussion. Councilmember Kurtz.
So I support the motion, but I'm also wondering, we've had this building appraised before. I don't know if we've had the land.
Which building are you talking about?
This one.
Oh, this one. Okay.
Yeah. I don't know if we've had the land appraised, but I think as we're talking about all the options on the table, I think it would be good to know the value of all of the assets that we have. So I would like to hear anybody else's thoughts before I would make a motion to amend about getting appraisals on this property and Town Square property.
As well as
And all of it.
the church.
What? Go ahead, Councilmember Ball.
Kyle, can't we just go off the assessed valuation?
That is not an accurate depiction of what might go on an open market.
Right.
Councilmember Kennedy.
I would be very apprehensive to try to put in motion to have all of our buildings appraised. I would have a concern with that. If the existing library, church building that we've looked at, that's only come up in the discussion, that the possibility of liquidating that and taking the assets to put towards something else. So I think that's very singular with that. And I would be very apprehensive to try to look at all of our properties, including this building, to see what the true valuation is. Quite honestly, I'm not concerned with the true valuation of this building, because we're here. It's going to utilize us in the future, even for whatever expansion we look at.
Councilmember Kurtz.
And the only reason that I ask about the 3 properties is because if one of the things that we've talked about is actually building something at Town Square. So if we were going to build something, we haven't decided what that could or couldn't be. But I think that there's ways to fund that and offset the cost of a bond if we have things to add to the table. So if we're talking about potentially a library, and I know I'm getting off topic with the actual motion on the floor, but if we're talking about doing something bigger, potentially at Town Square or not, I don't think we keep everything as is in order to do that. So.
Can I ask a quick follow-up to that? So if we, I guess, 2 questions. One, would we also do police and library building? Since this is all part of the same pot. And then 2, and again, maybe this is a question Kyle knows the answer to, or Mark, would that push it out even further? Or maybe Sean knows the answer. Would that push it out even further to get a response back? Or could we just take them as we get them?
Take one as we get them. I mean,
The appraisals. I
Separate
mean,
appraisals.
yeah, so I mean, if we order, let's say for the sake of argument, we order 4 appraisals. And they finish the library one right away, or they finish the city hall one right away. You know, they could be reported to us as they come in, as opposed to if we order 4, it's gonna take 5 months versus ordering 1 and it's gonna take 30 to 60 days.
I will add, I mean, I think as a discussion, you have to have the appraiser, right? And what their availability is to do that. I think your sentiment's right. If you say, I want 4 or 5 properties, or the city wants 4 or 5 properties to appraise, you know, what does that look like? You know, the city could have a priority list of saying, hey, we want these 2 first and, you know, go from there, but it will elongate the time period, you know, the more properties that you have, you know, to have a formal commercial appraisal conducted.
Councilmember Ball?
Yeah, as I've said, it's been a while since I was in real estate, but commercial real estate, commercial appraisals are very expensive and they do take a long time. So, I mean, unless we can find somebody that's got nothing to do, you know, it's gonna take some time and money. I mean, thousands of dollars.
Anybody else? The current motion is to order an appraisal on the Legacy Church building. Do you want to amend that, or do you want to just proceed on that vote first?
You can proceed on that.
Okay, so that's the motion on the floor, is to order an appraisal on the Legacy Church building. Although, any other discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, motion carries 5-2.
I would like to make a motion to do an appraisal on the town square property and the current city hall.
Second.
But not library and police.
So for discussion, I don't think there's been a concept yet where we've considered getting rid of the library police building. So that's the only reason why I've excluded that from my motion.
Okay, so the motion, it was seconded by Councilmember Dunn, is to do an appraisal on City Hall and the town square. Discussion.
Purpose?
I think that we're going to get to a point where we need to know what all of our options are, because I think we've literally thrown all the options on the table at this point. I don't think that we, until next week, have a real clear plan of what we do or don't want to do. But I would hate for us to get into a situation where we want to know the value of something because we want to maybe sell it. And then we don't have that information to make an informed decision about what we want to buy or what we want to invest in, if that makes sense. Like if we wanted to build something at Town Square, for an example, because that's been put out there, I don't know that we can keep the status quo with all of our buildings. And I would also be curious as the questions move on through the discussion next week, what the economy of scale is of having something else combined with the library to make the cost lower potentially and still get what we're asking for, which is additional space.
Councilmember Spencer.
The second option we were presented suggested getting everyone out of here into the Legacy Church building except Parks.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Correct.
Additional discussions on the motion? No. Okay, the motion is, oh, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was gonna say, could you?
Yes,
repeat
the motion
correct
is to order an appraisal on City Hall as well as Town Square. Any further questions or discussion?
Was it seconded?
Yeah, Councilmember Dunn seconded it. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, unanimously. Okay. All right. You need anything else from us at the moment, Ben?
No, I think I've got it.
Okay.
Appreciate that.
All right, thank you. All right, now we're gonna go back to 9A, which is the code enforcement, obstructions in the right of way. Thank you, guys.
Try and be as quick as I can on this. Obstructions in the public right of way. Next slide, please. So just a little bit of background for y'all. On December 24th, the city received a complaint about basketball hoops in the street in Rocky Hill. The complainant cited concerns that the basketball hoop was causing safety issues, street maintenance issues, both in terms of sweeping and snow removal, waste management pickup issues, and staff was sent to investigate the complaint. Now, as it relates to the basis for the complaint, I will tell you that we have heard anecdotally that there have been several incidents with waste management trucks and basketball hoops. And we also have, for those of you who are familiar with the Liberty Lake community page, there was a posting on February 7th about one of our snowplows actually catching one of these and dragging it. And yes, a claim has been filed against the city. Next slide, please. So I wanted to talk a little bit about what our code says about this. I had this just in case. City Municipal Code Section 8-3-2 talks about control of the streets, and the city does have the right to regulate, permit, and license all reasonable uses in the public right of way. As of now, we do not have any allowance for permitting of basketball hoops in the roadway. Section 894 talks about unlawful storage of personal property. Unlawful storage of personal property in public places. The city has the right to immediately remove property that is a significant obstruction or interference with the primary use of the property. Next slide, please. We also have city code related to maintenance of streets and sidewalks. So City Code Section 10-3I-3A12 says that all improved streets must be clear of obstructions to vehicle movement and parking from edge to edge and to the elevation of 13 feet and 6 inches above the street level. Section 10-3I-3A11 says all sidewalks must be clear of obstructions from edge to edge to an elevation of 7 feet 6 inches above sidewalk level. Why the 13 foot 6 inches? That's to prevent conflicts with vehicles operating lawfully in the public right of way. The 7 foot 6 inches is to avoid conflicts, I guess, potentially with people riding bikes. But the bottom line is that your typical basketball hoops range in height from 7 feet to 10 feet, depending upon the age of the user. And I also want to point out that unenforced, these hoops encroaching in our public right of way actually create a potential liability for the city. Next slide, please. So the complaint that we received was on Wilmington Court in Rocky Hill, but it also mentioned other basketball hoops in Rocky Hill. Well, there were actually 3 basketball hoops in Rocky Hill from the initial complaint. And next slide, please. Sue Hudson, our code enforcement specialist, also looked around the neighborhood and found 4 other photos or 4 other basketball hoops that were in the street in the Rocky Hill neighborhood. Next slide, please. So again, I want to make it clear that our process is trying to encourage voluntary compliance. And so Sue Hudson Rao, our specialist, got the complaint on December 24th. She went out and investigated it and actually knocked on doors. As you might imagine, on that day, only 2 were home. But others did later respond by phone to messages that were left for them. We do have door hangers now to leave these messages so people can reach out to us. So others did respond to her. She followed up with courtesy letters explaining the code and the need for compliance. 3 complied relatively quickly. We had no response from 2 of the 7, so attempted a second visit on January 3rd and received considerable pushback. I guess the hoops had been there for a while. On January 10th, our code enforcement specialist went out with our neighborhood resource officer from PD to try and visit the 4 that remained non-compliant. The one that was home agreed to comply. Sue did follow up with the remaining non-compliant by phone. And as of January 31st, all of the initial violations were resolved without the issuance of a notice of violation letter or threat of fines. So we achieved the goal, which was voluntary compliance. Since that time, Sue has been looking in other neighborhoods and following through. We've had a total of about 10 additional basketball hoops that were identified. And we're going through this same process. We had a couple that after the snow fell and their basketball hoop was frozen to the ground, they asked if they could get a little bit of a delay. And of course, Sue is working with them. So our goal is not to punish the violators, but just to make sure that we're maintaining safety and that the streets can be appropriately maintained. The concept of going out with the neighborhood resource officer was to maybe make a little bit more of a statement. Again, it was a friendly conversation, but sometimes a law enforcement officer in uniform maybe has a little bit more weight than somebody wearing a City of Liberty Lake logo. And so it was effective. Again, these were all friendly conversations. So, and one of the things that we have to look at as we're working through this is how we work with PD for enforcement when we have more egregious situations that do not happen. We're working through some of these issues. We're doing the same thing with the fire district to try and figure out when you have someone who really doesn't comply, how do we get to enforcement? And that is something that Sue is working with both PD and the fire district on. And it's something that we want to make sure that we are underscoring safety. So that is basically the story behind this. And with that, I would stand for any questions.
Councilmember Van Orman.
I'd like to clarify. I did read that post, and if you notice, preponderance of the people posting were in favor of the city. They too were saying it's against code. So, and for years we've tried to figure that one out. So thank you for having code enforcement go after.
Councilmember Ball.
This is more of a comment, but I want you to know, I write the letter, the newsletter for the Rocky Hill Homeowners Association, and I put a big piece about that in the last newsletter. It just went out a couple weeks ago. So
I appreciate that very much. And we also put something on social media just to remind everybody the reasons why the code says what it says.
Yeah.
Again, the goal being voluntary compliance.
Yeah.
Councilmember.
Well, and safety. Yeah.
And safety.
Lisa, I appreciate the explanation and the description of the code enforcement activity. And I'll just say I compliment and really am grateful for Sue's work specifically. It's not fun. I can only imagine. But what you've demonstrated here is tact and appropriateness. So I really appreciate the work.
Thank you.
I'm just going to make 2 comments. One, first of all, I understand exactly why we do this, and I don't want the city to get sued any more than anybody else does. My 2 concerns on this are, one, I don't think we should be going out on Christmas Eve and knocking on doors and telling people to get rid of, take their basketball hoops out. I understand that it was, we're not technically closed on Christmas Eve, but I think it sends the wrong message to our citizens.
We got the complaint on Christmas Eve from an elected official in the city. So that's all I'm going to say, and I'm not.
Okay. The second thing is that look, I understand that it's tough to enforce these things, but I do think we take it up a notch when we're sending uniform officers out. That's my concern about this, is that, it's one thing to have this be in code and to send out Sue or send out other city officials. It's quite another to have an officer show up at your door because your basketball hoop is in the street. And so I would hope that in the future that, I know it's a last resort if they're not compliant, but it would be a last resort, because I just don't, I don't like the idea personally of our city being known for sending police officers out to police basketball hoops. Maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm in the minority on this particular topic, but I do think if you're just the average citizen sitting at home and all of a sudden a police officer shows up at your door, that really ratchets up the whether this is an issue that needs to go before the police department, and ratchets it up for a homeowner as well.
And again, I would like to make the comment that being a code enforcement officer is harder than you realize. And when my code specialist is getting significant resistance and in your face resistance.
No, I know. There's no right answer for this, but yeah. Councilmember Paul.
Well, that's what I was gonna say is, Sue, that's the code enforcement officer. Okay, I haven't met her. Yes, I mean, people can really get in your face. And I think it's safer for her to have that officer with her, so if she was getting considerable pushback, yes, she needs that person.
Councilmember Kennedy.
Lisa, thank you for enlightening us on this. Once again, I think what we're simply doing is enforcing rules that we've had. This happens to be over a basketball hoop. All I want to get on record is that I think you've done a slam dunk job here.
And if I may, I did not. Sue did.
Any other comments,
I'll amend
questions?
my statement for Sue.
Yeah, I'll just say, I mean, it sounds like the steps taken were pretty reasonable. I agree with the sentiment that, if we're sending out city staff and they could potentially be in harm's way, there does need to be a provision for that. I mean, I don't want her going out and, having a homeowner assault her or something.
Yeah.
I mean, that would not be good either. So, but I think the steps that were taken and do you guys have a process that you've already put in place, or was this kind of gosh, this is the first kind of thing that's come up since she's been put in place, and so I'm just curious whether there's going to be kind of a codified,
Yeah, so
process.
Sue is working on developing standard operating procedures, SOPs, as it relates to different types of enforcement. And this was one that we talked through. We're doing the same thing with like fire and some of the other issues that we have, and trying to kind of have a process in place. We've always had a process in place, but it was basically whoever had capacity at any given time. And it is, I mean, you write letters and you write letters and you write letters and you visit and you visit and you write letters. And it's challenging. It really does take dedicated time to really follow through with these things in a relatively compressed timeline to encourage compliance. And that's the benefit of having Sue on the team, because that is her focus.
Lisa, could this same, I mean, I would bet at least half of the trees in the Rocky Hill neighborhood are not above 13.6 feet.
Yes, and so you are correct. We are working on both the sidewalk clearance issue, and we're also going to be looking at the sidewalk, the sidewalk trip hazards. And in fact, Sue is also in the process of researching what some other communities have done and what some options may be for us to facilitate things like the sidewalk repair, things that we will be bringing to this council as options for the city. and there may be some budget associated with it. It may be something as simple as providing a service that by the economy of scale, the homeowners could buy into to repair their sidewalks so that they're not being hit with the charges, or a shared cost for an arborist. And we actually worked with River District a couple years ago and got the HOA to offer that service, and we're trying to do those sorts of things again. So again, this is really time-intensive stuff.
Yeah.
But those are the types of things that Sue will be working on and will be working on in the future. So I would agree with you that it's a very important issue to address.
Any other questions, comments?
Yeah, I'll just make the comment. I mean, going around the neighborhoods last year while campaigning, I mean, that was a major concern of homeowners. Like the city or the HOA forces me to have this tree here. It's ruined my sidewalk, and now I'm on the hook. So yeah, that's gonna be a huge. If we got pushed back on a couple of basketball hoops, that's gonna be screaming all over the community page. So yeah, it's gonna be a tricky one.
But that,
Go ahead.
that has been a concern of mine, though, is the uneven sidewalks, because I've almost tripped on them, and I've told the story before about the wheelchair person almost, it's bad. They do need to be fixed.
Well, and again, you guys have authorized the contract for the sidewalk scanning. That will give us the data that we need.
Right.
We'll plug that into the sidewalk master plan. We'll do some community engagement to try and figure out how best to approach it. Sue is working on a white paper. She's researching what some other communities are doing. And so that we can put some options before you. So.
All right, thanks, Lisa.
Thank you.
All right, we are now up to commission appointment process. And this was one of the items we'd been discussing. This could be fairly quick tonight because of the fact that we talked about doing a governance manual. Thank you. But let me just touch on a few of the items that I sent to council in the email. I think it was, what is today? Tuesday? So Monday, yesterday? On some ideas that I had come up with, and I'm sure others will have other ideas as well, for improving the city appointment process. See if I can. Kelsey, if I send this to you, can you share it? Okay, 1 second. Evan, remind me your email. All right. All right, hopefully that is on the way. But until we get that up on the screen, I will just say that obviously with the city appointment process over the past couple of months, there's been concerns that I think many of us have had about how that plays out, what we do with the city appointments, how the council has a role to play in approving appointments by the mayor. And so in your emails, you will see the 10 different ideas that I had put forward. Many of these are already in place, but a few of them kind of tweak the process a little bit. So obviously a candidate would fill out a city application for a city advisory board and commission. That application goes to the mayor. The mayor has an executive review, does interviews with the candidates, selects which candidate she wants to have in different positions. And then what I was, one of the items that I put in here follows some of the comments that I know Councilmember Kennedy had, I had as well, regarding our access to more information from the candidates. And so I put an item on there, number 5, that talks about how candidates could fill out a legislative questionnaire. So obviously the application goes to the mayor. The mayor reviews that. The mayor has the option to call the references that are on that list. But we don't really see all those things. We don't know all the questions that are asked in the interviews. And so my thought was that we could, this council could create its own questionnaire that could go to the candidates. And they would all be the same 10 questions, let's say. And then the candidates would fill that out, and then that would be sent to us so that we could have more information on the candidate other than, what is your background? Why are you excited about this position? It's the council as a whole could come up with 5 to 10 different questions. Obviously, it would be placed on the agenda for the following meeting or whatever meeting is coming up, with the recommended action item being consider the appointment. I think one of the things that we've tripped on in the past is that the packet says approve the appointment, which 99% of the time we do approve the appointment, but there might be a point in time where we say, the council is the one that actually decides whether to approve it or not. So my suggestion would be that we simply say that the recommended action be consider the appointment. Obviously, the candidate would attend the meeting. And then what I would really love to see is that all of us have the opportunity in an open session to ask a question. We kind of do right now, but sometimes there's a question asked, sometimes there's not. I think we should come up with a more formalized process that says, okay, Councilmember Van Orman, Councilmember Kurtz, kind of like what we've done in the past with candidates to fill positions on this council, where we all kind of go through and ask one of our own questions. And then obviously the council would vote for approval. And I would recommend, until we have some sort of board in this room, that we do that by voice vote, so that we know what the approval is and who's voting what way. And then one item that I put on here is that, look, in the situation where a candidate is rejected, they can be reappointed, but after a certain period of time. So maybe it's 90 days, maybe it's 60 days, whatever the council could decide. So those are some of the ideas that I put forward. Obviously, I'm not wedded to any of those in particular. I just wanted to get those out on the table so that everyone, hopefully I can get everyone thinking. And then if we want to include a process like this in the governance manual, we could certainly do that. I think that's probably a good place to have it. And then that would be the process that we'd follow going forward. I'll just end by saying this, that the executive branch, obviously in our city, is responsible for appointing the candidates, but this council has the final say in if those people are selected to fill those particular positions. So I think we always need to keep that in mind, is that it's not necessarily a rubber stamp process, that we have a responsibility to make sure that the candidates that are being put forward are good candidates for those particular positions. And I would hope that in the future, we all take that responsibility as seriously as we possibly can. So with that, I'll open it up to any questions, comments, concerns, morals, criticisms. Councilmember Spencer.
Thank you. My question is for Sean, and this has kind of come up in some of our discussions on council rules and procedure. So do we know what elements of these mayoral appointments are dictated by RCW rather than just, local policy?
Most of them are not dictated by statute. The state doesn't want to get involved in local decision-making for those types of positions. You certainly have the elected official statute that gives some guidelines of timing and process. And if the local officials don't make the decision, that the county officials will make the decisions as it relates to elected officials. But most of your commission appointments are handled at the local level. And you don't get into I'll call it the weeds relative to the state regulating that.
Councilmember Kennedy.
I've always been comfortable allowing the mayor's office to make that appointment, do the interviews and stuff. I've been very critical in the past for a long period of time is the application process. There's certain things that are redacted off of there. I don't need to know what their address is. I don't need to know what their phone number is. I don't care about that. What I do need to know is that what does the individual know and think about the position they're applying for? So I am absolutely in favor of having a series of questions, 10, 12, whatever it's going to be, that the same questions are asked of everybody who applies for any of our commissions. Because that will give us a consistency. If anything else, it will give us is understanding that who we're getting ready to vote on. Do they understand what their responsibility is when it comes to what our government is? I have to relate back in our, the last appointment we had. When I look at resumes, we have impressive resumes, absolutely impressive. I voted no on one individual. I was the only one who voted no on that individual. And I based that on is that the resume was outstanding. But I asked the question, did the individual understand what she was getting into? And the answer was basically no. So that led me to think, well, hold it. Maybe the interview process was not adequate to let her know what the requirement is. So I'm really supportive of the having a questionnaire. The benefit is then when somebody comes in and we're going to interview them, if I've already seen what their answers are, for me, it's a slam dunk, either move forward or not.
Councilmember Kurtz.
I'd like to make a motion to extend the meeting to 9:15.
Second.
Forgot all about that. It's expiring. The motion is to extend the meeting to 9:15, has been seconded by Councilmember Kennedy. All those in favor, please say aye. All right, we are extended.
Okay, I have a comment.
Oh, shoot.
Yes, Councilmember Kurtz.
A couple initial thoughts when I looked at this yesterday is I want to strike a balance between having I don't want to discourage people from applying to fill a vacancy on one of our boards and commissions, while also recognizing that they serve an important advisory role to the council. So the information that I sent to you guys, I'd like you guys to think about that a little bit as well. I think in there were opportunities for us to delineate some objective ways for us to review candidates, which I think are important. Mayor Pro Tem, in the process that you outlined, it talks about 2 application processes. And as an idea, I'm wondering if whenever the city gets an application for a board or a commission, if we could just get a copy of it, like somehow it just magically appears for all of us to see so we can all see it and look at it when we want to. And then I think revising our actual application itself to get to the questions and to give some informative language on the application, to let people know what it is they're getting themselves into if they haven't read that already. They're not just volunteering to, do good in the community, that there's actually responsibilities and that they're also held to whatever governance manual rules of procedure that they need to take it seriously, I guess is what I'm saying. But I think there are some ways to even just tweak what it is that we do now to meet our need for more information, but then also to give us a better process for being objective in how we assess the candidates.
Councilmember Dunn.
So it sounds like we just want to add some questions to an application. And that these questions are uniform for all positions and commissions. Does that sound right? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Councilmember Van Orman.
I would say with that question, each one of our commissions are different. And asking the same 10 questions is going to be a little difficult. But if we add in what their responsibilities are in each one of those, that would really kind of narrow it down. And specifically put those questions to whatever commission it is, because planning commission is going to be way different than Parks and Arts or, yeah.
Well, I was just going to mention, in response to Councilmember Dunn's question, I think, yes, the questions are part of it, but I think the other part of it is formalizing the process in these chambers a little more than what we have right now, where sometimes they show up, sometimes they don't. Sometimes we ask questions, sometimes we don't. I mean, I really think that as a responsibility of all of us should be to ask questions as much as we can of candidates for different positions. But it kind of just depends on the meeting that we do that.
I know
Yeah, Councilmember Ball, and then I'll come back to Councilmember.
Doesn't the current application or whatever you call it, it does have references. You have in here including references. They always list people that,
Right. So what I'm saying is that it would also be on the legislative questionnaire. So the legislative questionnaire in this scenario, the legislative questionnaire is what would be made public, as opposed to what we make public now, which is just kind of the standard application that has a lot of stuff blacked out.
okay, then to follow up, I think it was Councilmember Dunn that said then that's 2 applications. That's kind of redundant, so.
Probably just have one. Just put that
Yeah,
for
just have one
questions.
application and.
Yes, Councilmember Kennedy.
Well, I think Councilman Dunn brings up a very good point, and I think we could have a standard X number of questions that covers everybody, and then there can be an addition to if it's a specific, if it's planning commission or something like that. I think the big challenge has been in the past is that, like you mentioned, references. I look at those references and I only look at for one reason. Do I know any of these people?
Right.
Because I'm not contacting them.
Yeah.
I don't think it's quite honestly appropriate for me to contact them. I think that's a responsibility that we give to the mayor's office. But I expect that job to be done to the point that the information is given to us. We know exactly what went on. The only time we run into problems here is when things are done and we didn't find out about it. And that created the problem that we're dealing with today. That's what I'm trying to circumvent.
Councilmember Van Orman.
one thing that I noticed with some of our applications is depending upon the time or the day, the applicant couldn't be here.
Yeah.
If we can make a process to where they could, give kind of an interview and be able to post that, I think that might help out in those circumstances that the applicant can't be here. Because I don't want to not appoint somebody because they're not here. And I think in many cases, that may have been a no vote in my case. So.
Councilmember Ball.
So you're suggesting like a video interview or a video, hi, and we all see it at the meeting? Right?
Or at least.
That's a good idea.
Councilmember Kurtz.
I like the brainstorming, but I'm wondering if I was an average citizen who was maybe interested in parks and arts, would I do that, or would it turn me off? So that's where I mean, like, we gotta strike the balance, right? Like, what do I have to wear? What do I gotta say? I don't even like, right?
I don't want to make it any more.
So I don't want to minimize your contribution. But I also want to make sure that we're also thinking about what our average citizen who is not probably going to want to be on the city council, or maybe they will be at some point, but I want to encourage participation and increase our ability to feel confident in the candidates. So if we need to ask different questions on the application, like if we're not ever going to call references, why would we even ask them that? Like, I think there's ways for us to adjust the application to get the information that we're looking for. I don't know how to increase the confidence in the process of the mayoral appointment, which I think still feels a little bit like the sticking point. But I think that there's some ways to outline the procedure, which is what we've had trouble with over the last, since I've been here.
Councilmember Kennedy.
I would be very uncomfortable to put a requirement that they have to be here for an interview. I agree with Councilman Kurtz that there are individuals who can be on a committee, do an outstanding job. They're not public speakers. They're not interested in that. They're apprehensive about it. They don't even want to come to one of these meetings on it. So to make that requirement as part of that, I would leave it as an option. If they wanted to. For me, if there's 10 or 12 questions and they're answering that, I can make a decision based on that very easily. It would just be a bonus if they were here. Because if it's sufficient in those answers, all I'm going to do is say thank you.
Anything else? Councilmember Spencer?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with what's been said. I think you do have to strike a balance. I think for me, part of the issue right now is I don't have any idea what took place in that initial interview. I don't know what questions were asked. I don't know what topics were discussed. I don't know what motivations the individuals involved have. And so all I get is that application, which is just very basic information. It doesn't tell me anything about them other than, you know, their education and, you know, their credentials. My biggest concern is just simply people coming in with, you know, some sort of agenda other than they just want to serve. If, you know, we can kind of get that a little bit in listening to them talk. But, you know, I think it would be nice to have something, whether, you know, I think the video might be a little bit too far, but even if the mayor has a specific set of questions that they ask them, and those answers are recorded so that we can see, okay, here's what this person was asked, here was their answers. And then when it comes to us, then we can expound upon that. We can say, I see you said this about this topic. Can you tell me a little bit more about that? It would give us something to go off of other than just simply their credentials. Because up to this point, it really has just been, are we going to rubber stamp this or not? You know, so that's what I want to kind of avoid.
Councilmember Kurtz.
Some councils actually do the interviews themselves. I've found.
City of
They-
Spokane does that, I think.
Yeah, and a few other in the rules of procedures, they do the interviews. Now, think about the time or commitment that would require us to do. They do it at certain meetings. But that is done by other cities.
Councilmember Kennedy.
Many, many years ago, City of Spokane, part of their process was if you're going to be on one of their committees, you actually came to a city council member, or excuse me, city council meeting and asked some questions. I was on the planning commission, and I remember what they were talking about is getting rid of that because they had individuals who had an interest of applying, but it was like, I've got to go to a city council meeting. I'm going to be grilled. And what we had is we had a lot of vacancies. And it worked against us. So.
Yeah, I think going along with that, I think coming up with some additional questions that we put forward. But if we have some idea about what questions, because it seems like, you know, if you're the mayor interviewing a bunch of folks for a particular council or board, you're going to have a specific set of questions. So let us see those questions and let us see the answers, you know.
Councilmember Kurtz.
I wonder if we could assign ourselves some homework over the next 2 weeks, because I'm sure we're going to talk about this again, because I don't think we're going to come to any decision tonight. But if we can each come up with some questions that we would like to have on an application, things that we think would really get to the heart of whether they understand the position, maybe even some pieces of information we want to put on an application that we want them to know, or links to it that we want them to read and say that they read with an initial or something. Between now and I don't know when we're going to talk about this again, but I think that if we have specific things we want to get at, let's put that together and draft up a new application.
Anybody have any, excuse me, objection to that? Councilmember
No,
Ball.
no, but the questions are going to be different though for each commission. You know, you're not going to ask somebody applying for, the CEC, the same questions you're going to ask somebody, that's applying for the planning commission.
Possibly. I
Yeah.
think that there might be some differences, but those are the questions we need to sort of, I wasn't recognized, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
To sort out.
Oh, no, it's okay. Yeah, okay. I see what you're saying, but yeah, I mean, it's going to be different questions, I think. Yeah.
Well, and we can bring this back on the night we talked about the governance manual too, if we wanted to,
Yeah, I mean,
as part of it.
I think we could even, if there's people that really want to do this application thing and take it on as a little subgroup, we could do
Yeah.
that too.
Councilmember Kennedy.
I've always felt that the absolute number one question that should be asked, do they understand what our government is? Do you understand what the citizens of this city voted for, the type of government we have? And what's the pecking order, whatever you want to call it, the responsibilities that are there, that do they understand that when they come into it? Because I honestly do believe that we've had misunderstandings because individuals didn't totally understand that.
Any other thoughts on this? Okay, we will move forward and hopefully bring it back with everybody come up with a few questions. We'll bring that back maybe on March 4th. All right. All right, so we are now up to general business. So I will make a motion to approve general business items 10A through G.
Second.
Second by Councilmember Kurtz. No discussion. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right, all passes 7-0. No general business. Council comments, number 12 on the agenda. Council comments. Yes, Councilmember Spencer.
This is gonna be for the deputy chief from the, because we didn't get a chance to talk about the department reports, at least I don't remember that coming up, but so from the report, the DUI that somebody claimed that somebody was following him and then they came to the PD. Did they follow him into the parking lot kind of thing? Do you know what happened there?
Oh, yeah, not right off the top of my head. but
Okay.
Yeah.
I was just curious. It made it sound like so, because it said the complainant, claimed that this person was driving erratically and that they were following them. So they pulled into the PD. I'm just curious whether this individual followed him into the parking lot of the PD.
I don't believe the individual did. No,
Okay.
it just ended up with the DUI. That's how it ended up working.
Anything else? The motion was to extend the meeting to 9:10, is that right?
15.
15, all right, so we got enough time. All right, no public hearings or appeals, actually, there is a resolution, 25-273, Kelsey.
Resolution number 25-273, a resolution of the City of Liberty Lake, Washington, approving the final plat of Trutina 8th Edition, located in the south half of the northeast quarter of Section 10, Township 25N, Range 45 EWM, Liberty Lake, Washington, file 2015.PL0001H.
Public comment, Sean? All right, we will open up resolution 25-273 to public comment at 9:05. Any public comment on this resolution only? Anybody online? Going once. Going twice. That's sufficient. All right, we will close public comment on resolution 25-273 and entertain a motion.
Make a motion.
Somebody.
Oh.
Anyone.
That's 273, so we can get out of here.
Second. Second by Councilmember Spencer. Discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Passes 7-0. Now we are up to ordinances. Second read of ordinance number 309.
Ordinance number 309, an ordinance of the City of Liberty Lake, Washington, amending City of Liberty Lake Development Code and River District Development Regulations regarding limited use standards for emergency housing and shelters.
All right, we will open it up to public testimony at 9:07. Nobody online? Nobody in person? All right, we'll close public testimony at 9:07. Any discussion on ordinance number 309? I'll just say real quickly, obviously I'll vote in favor of this. I do think it's unfortunately that we're being required to make this happen because every city is different and I think unfortunately this is a resolution for a different type of city than ours, but nevertheless, we have to do it. Any other discussion?
Need a motion.
I'll move to approve ordinance number 309.
Second.
Okay. Motion by Councilmember Spencer and second by Councilmember Kennedy. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Passes 7-0. Thank you all very much. No emergency ordinances. Introduction of upcoming agenda items. We have 7 minutes. Earlier tonight, we added the governance manual discussion to the March 4th meeting.
Make a clarification. Say that again.
And a workshop to the March 4th on fees.
Yes, and we added governance to 4th, right?
No, we just got consensus for me to keep working with. the
Okay,
committee,
okay, I'm
so,
sorry.
yeah.
Okay, so March 4th was then the workshop on the field fees.
The baseball.
Yeah.
fields. Okay.
Yeah. Anything else that we should be adding on here?
And then we're also doing, the thing we just talked about, the
Appointment process.
appointment
Yes.
process.
Yep. Okay.
For the fields, I think, yeah.
Yeah, I think that would be part of the workshop. Kyle, you're gonna be able to bring back an emergency ordinance if we need it on the field issue?
Yeah, we'll have that to consider on the heels of that discussion.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Can we do an emergency ordinance on something like that?
It's not an emergency ordinance. You can suspend the rules though to move it
Okay.
to.
Yeah.
Clarification.
What did you say, Sean? Is
It's
suspend the rule?
it's not an emergency ordinance in the context of what an emergency ordinance is.
Oh.
Like a catastrophe, for example,
Right.
and so you're doing something. But you can have a first read ordinance and then suspend the rules, proceed it to a second read at the same meeting and pass it at that meeting.
Okay.
So we don't have to have it 2 meetings in a row.
Hmm.
Any other, yes, Kyle?
To go with that though, wouldn't we almost already have to have decided what we're going to do? So have that in the language for a first read ordinance? Especially if we're gonna move to a second read, suspend the rules. I mean, so it seems like we'd almost have to have the discussion and then in the next meeting, bring a first read.
That's a
It seems like
that's certainly a possibility. I don't disagree with that sentiment. That doesn't mean that an ordinance couldn't be prepared relative to kind of a generic ordinance, I guess, that would need to be filled in with certain things for the consideration of the council. I think probably the more appropriate way is what you're suggesting.
Yeah.
But there would be a way to do it if you wanted to do that.
Anything else for the calendar?
But you want it to be at that meeting because the cutoff for the registration is the 6th.
It's just, it's not anything that hurts the city. It's just them, their planning issue.
Courtesy to the
Yeah.
kids and their families
Yeah.
and whatever. Yeah, okay. Okay.
Anything else on the calendar?
Yeah, so we've still got March 4th for the secondhand smoke.
Yes, that's on there. Yep.
Okay. But are we gonna be prepared for that discussion? Do we know?
Mark?
Yes, we will be prepared to have that discussion on March 4th.
Okay. All right, we are good on upcoming agenda items. We're up to citizen comments. Item number 18, we have the opportunity now for citizen comments, 3 minutes. For anyone here in chambers or online who wants to offer citizen comments, please say who you are and if you are a resident of the city. We have one here in chamber and then we'll go online.
David Clay, resident of Liberty Lake. This is just in reference to the applications. So you have a lot of vacant applications or openings. So I recently withdrew an application. I was there almost a month and a half. So I volunteered for Scope instead, several work groups within OFID, and I work with Katie on the bikes, and I'm doing some other things. I applaud the idea of the council members getting those applications. I'm not faulting anyone, but when people volunteer, like me, I'm retired. I want to fill my time. I want to do something, as I think all of you know, with my secondhand smoke initiative and things like that. And I'm willing to help you on the governance guide as well. So that's all I have to say is you take a look at those, and I think the questions would be great. Just ask somebody if they know about the committee they're volunteering for. It could be a general question. I volunteered for the community engagement because I'm passionate about getting the community involved with our city. So that's all I would say is take a hard look at that, and you know, maybe I'll reconsider and try and manage that in my time. But I am interested in helping you out with that. Thank you.
Thanks, David. Anybody else in chambers? Anyone online? All right, we will adjourn at 9:13. Thank you, everyone.